And we're live. How's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining. Let me see if I can make that chat a little bit bigger. Got a good few news stories to have a look at this afternoon, and we've got Plant Geezer joining at 5 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. We've got PETA targeting Jeremy Clarkson's pub, which sounds like we've got to give that a go. And we've also got Beyond Meat recruiting an NHS doctor, as well as a fitness influencer, to help with their campaigning in the UK. So we'll have a little look at that as well. Look at that. I tried to make chat bigger, and it's just got rid of it. That is not what I wanted. Oh, there you are. Okay, I guess it comes through now. It's off topic. What about Trump renaming Lake Ontario? Yeah, latest Trump goss. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have too much to say about that. I have had a couple of Trump stories that I've had a look at as they relate to meat things. In particular, the slaughter deregulation that he's going to do to try and help the ailing beef supply chain. Don't know if that's going to make too much difference, honestly. They're doing the beef imports now, so a lot of the ranchers are pissed off about that. But one way or another, there is less beef being produced and fewer animals being killed, so that's what we want at the end of the day. Hey, Tristan King, how's it going? Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. But let's get into it. This is a good bit of celeb fodder. Clarkson's pub has been targeted by PETA with their dog barbecue stunt. His pub's called the Farmer's Dog, and so they've kind of gone hard on that angle. Let's have a look. Jeremy Clarkson's Oxfordshire pub has become the target of a graphic protest by vegan activists who staged a mock barbecue featuring a realistic-looking dog. Campaigners from animal rights group PETA descended on the Farmer's Dog in Burford, where they displayed the imitation animal appearing to have been charred on a barbecue. Alongside it was a sign asking customers, "Wouldn't eat the farmer's dog? Why eat a pig? Go vegan." The deliberately provocative stunt was intended to draw comparisons between eating pigs and animals traditionally kept as pets. Clarkson has become like a bit of an unwitting face of the farming community. Whether that's fair or not, I think probably a lot of people who have been farmers for a long time and really rely on it for their living kind of roll their eyes at Clarkson. But he is running a working farm, and I know that I've not actually seen his show, but I know that he has moments where he is conflicted about sending his animals to slaughter, as many farmers do. So, I think that a few years ago he would have been someone to be very flippant towards vegetarians or vegans. I can remember when he was the Top Gear host, and that was very much part of his character. But I think, I dare say now, he has had a bit more kind of critical reflection and interaction. He's really there with the animals, and he's really there sending them to slaughter. I think he cries on the show, right? Again, this is a super common experience for animal farmers. as much as it's kind of a meme for vegans, say, oh, you know, farmers love their animals, right? They kind of do feel that, and they are deeply conflicted about sending them to slaughter. Now, of course, they're in a situation where they wouldn't have those animals if they weren't destined for slaughter. And I guess that is kind of what the software that they run when they're thinking about this. He still shits on vegans. Okay, yeah, I mean, I can believe it. Maybe that's a bit of a hard part of his character to shake. He ate the animals he slaughtered. Yeah, I guess that doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's got some way to go, let's say that. Clarkson, 66, opened The Farmer's Dog in 2024, with his efforts to get the venture up and running documented on his hit Prime Video series Clarkson's Farm. The pub has made serving British produce a central part of its offering. Explaining why the group had targeted the former Top Gear presenter's business, PETA senior campaigner manager Kate Werner said, "Pigs are playful, intelligent individuals who feel pain and fear, love their families and value their own lives, just like dogs do." Clarkson says he's always been fond of pigs, and he and other patrons ought to put that fondness into practice and leave pigs off their plates, because there's no more reason to eat a pig than a dog. Yeah, I mean, I have always found this a very helpful comparison to reach for, because people so get it with dogs, and they so don't get it with pigs, and they're so similar. They look similar, they've got similar little faces and everything. I think this is the closest part where you can draw comparisons between animals that are really going to be impactful. And again, I'm sure Clarkson will have thought of this. I think that he probably is someone who knows at this point. Actually, the vegans have got a point, even if he kind of still makes a point of taking the piss out of them in his public persona. Hey, Jeremy, how's it going? Nice to see you. We're talking about the other Jeremy. The organisation also pointed to research into pigs' intelligence and emotional behaviour as part of its campaign, arguing that the animals are capable of recognising their names and displaying empathy toward one another. PETA claims that someone adopting a vegan diet can prevent almost 200 animals a year from being slaughtered. Yeah, I think that is about accurate. I was actually looking at these numbers the other day. There's quite a range of estimates between like 40 something at the low end and about 400 at the high end. I think I've averaged it out before to about 140, 150. But 200 is definitely a reasonable estimate for, number of animals killed by the average meat eater per year. It's wild if you think about it. It's like every other day an animal will lose its life per person eating meat. It's not the first time Clarkson has found himself in the organisation's sights. There's the barbecue dog stunt. This is a regular that PETA used. They've done this in Bristol before. Again, I think it's really good, really impactful, graphic way to have people think about what we're actually doing and think that actually this isn't too far from cooking dogs. It's kind of bizarre that somebody who works at PETA has this like in their garage or something, you know. They're going out to do stunt day. They're like, well, who's got the charred dog? But there they are outside Clarkson's pub. Last December, PETA sent the broadcaster what it dubbed a Chris Massacre jumper. Their deliberately gruesome festive design featured a Christmas tree made from images of slaughtered pigs and splattered with imitation blood. Clarkson has not publicly responded to the group's latest protest. The Standard contacted Clarkson's rep for comment. Interesting. Okay, so he had, or certainly when this was written, he had not said anything about this protest. I do feel that some years ago he would have been much quicker to have a flippant remark ready. But he's not so quick to dismiss the vegan perspective, having actually been involved with farming animals. My understanding is he's become somewhat more woke and more understanding of the issues here. Again, I haven't seen this show, so someone correct me if I'm wrong. I might be giving Clarkson too much credit here. Meanwhile, Clarkson recently revealed the cunning way he managed to beat the hosepipe ban for the garden of his pub. Okay, I don't know if we want to care about this. Thames Water, blah, blah, blah. Legal way of getting, all right. Okay, we don't care about Jeremy Clarkson beating the hosepipe ban. Has he said anything about this now? This is 3 days ago. Let's have a look. Clarkson issues warning to PETA protesters. 1 day ago. TV star farmer Jeremy Clarkson has responded after his pub, The Farmer's Dog, was targeted by vegan activists who set realistic-looking dog alight on a barbecue. PETA activists set up shop outside the Oxfordshire watering hole, which prides itself on only serving British produce. Although Jeremy has never publicly responded to the charity's protests in the past, on this occasion he felt the need to speak out. All right, moment of truth. Is Clarkson woke or no? The Clarkson's Farm star issued a warning as he informed the protesters, who he described as vegetabilists. Yeah, that's very droll, Jeremy. Humans only eat plants or animals that live on plants. We do not eat animals that eat meat, and that's why we don't eat dogs. What? What a bizarre response. Why would he think that that's the reason we don't eat dogs? This isn't even correct, by the way, because a lot of factory-farmed animals are fed fish meal. So we do eat animals that eat animals because we feed them animals. This is such a bizarre... It never occurred to me that anyone would have that belief. Well, it's okay to eat pigs but not dogs because dogs eat meat. This is such a bizarre thing to think. Telling them to get a job, he added a sarcastic warning saying, if you turn up at the pub again, be advised, as a vegan, it is perfectly acceptable and safe to put you in one of the ovens and serve you up with some nice potatoes and a couple of buttered carrots. Yeah, okay, so maybe he's not that woke. That's kind of, I feel, par for the course. I do think he probably knows at this point, but has to kind of play his character. I mean, what do you say in this scenario? Like, yeah, I've sent pigs to be slaughtered and I kind of get it. Fair play. Like, this is such a strange, confabulated reason to eat pigs but not dogs. It's because dogs eat meat. What if I have a dog that doesn't eat meat? Does that mean that it's okay to eat that dog? I do have a dog that doesn't eat meat. In Clarkson's world, does that make my dog fair play for dinner? You'd be surprised to come across this argument before about eating herbivores but not carnivores or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's really bizarre. I don't know who would have ever thought of that. So then it's cooking and eating vegans is very like William Sitwell kind of banter. Another hilarious journalist, quote unquote. He made the remarks in his column in The Sun, as he recalled the same protester had previously tried to make a statement by invading the parade ring at his inaugural Farm Fest at Stoneleigh Park in May 2026. On that occasion, he dressed in a giant inflatable broccoli costume and ran in front of Jeremy's tractor. It wasn't a very dignified protest, Jeremy wrote, explaining that the security had picked him up by one leg and thrown him over the fence. The vegan activist set up a fake barbecue along with the sign that read "Wouldn't eat the farmer's dog." Yeah, we know this. Here they are again. And here's the campaign manager from PETA again. We read that already. So, really bizarre response from Clarkson. I mean, I didn't expect him to have anything intelligent to say, but this is less intelligent than the low standards I was expecting. I mean, Clarkson's got to ask himself, hasn't he, now that he's seen the process up close, being involved with raising animals, feeding them, taking care of them, seeing to their needs. And he's not running a factory farm, right? He is running a small-scale farm. He will have been, the one in contact with all of these animals and had a connection with them and so on. And I know that he got emotional about it when he was sending those animals to slaughter. And that's a totally human reaction. That's a totally healthy feeling to have. And it's very common for animal farmers who often say that the day, market day, right, when their animals are going to go to slaughter, is a very emotional day and a very difficult day. So Jeremy's had that very common experience. He will have seen this protest. On some level, he knows that they're right, but he kind of has to play this character. So it's get a job and we can eat dogs because they don't eat meat, and we can cook vegans in the oven and so on. Like, we know there's a human in there, Jeremy. We know that there's an empathetic person who felt something when sending their animals to slaughter. And it's kind of the safe option that is expected of your public persona. Oh, laugh at the vegans and, laugh it off and don't have any kind of critical reflection. But it must feel a little bit dirty, because I'm convinced at this point that at least a part of Jezza knows that the vegans are right. So there you go. What do you think? Am I giving him too much credit? He's given this sort of jovial, flippant response to the PETA protests. In my mind, he kind of has to give that response. He's Jeremy Clarkson. That's what people expect from him. But I know that there's a bit of him that knows they're right as well. Pigs are omnivores, WTF? Yeah, that's a really weird argument that he's given. That's a new one for me. It's as if he just said the same thing, that first thing that came to his mind. I didn't know this, but apparently chickens are omnivores too. Clarkson's response wasn't just idiotic, it was wrong. Yeah. I think he's suffering from cognitive dissonance or is a psychopath. I think those are the options. I think he's in deep dissonance. I think many, many animal farmers are in that same situation, in deep, deep cognitive dissonance. I think there's some don't eat anything that's third from the sun rule that some people believe, whereby you can eat plants and animals that eat plants, but not animals that eat animals. Third from the sun, really? Okay. That sounds like some woo-woo shit. I mean, on a trophic chart level, that would be the more efficient thing to do. It is terribly inefficient that we're feeding, and bad for animals, that we're feeding fish meal to farmed animals. That's not a good thing. But yeah, it's no comfort to the herbivorous animals if we eat them. Well, don't worry, you're only second from the sun, so your dinner. Clarkson kind of reminds me of Piers Morgan, same old white man, anti-vegan vibes. So true, B-Loom, so true. Same genre of anti-vegan, hey. I mean, to be honest, this is basically the only genre of anti-vegan. Same, like, you could put like Trump in this same category. There's a big Republican trend of calling people vegans now. Piers Morgan. I mean, it's very. This is what 90% of anti-vegans look like. But there you go. Wonder if anything got through to him. Let's have a look. Don't know who's worse, Pierce or Clarkson. Yeah. I'm going to say Clarkson, but it's probably close. Clarkson punched Pierce in the face. Did he really? I know that he had some sort of violent thing that he got in trouble for. I didn't know he punched Piers Morgan. "12-year-old edgelord boys have never attained manly restraint or responsibility towards others." Very true, Jeremy. Very true. Clarkson's logic makes eating humans ethical. Yeah, that's very true. Only vegans, though. Oh, that's crazy, Oppenheimer. I feel like I'm out of the loop on that. Let's Google that real quick. Jeremy Clarkson punched Piers Morgan 3 times in the head at the British Press Awards in 2004. Jeez, okay. Yeah, I did not know about this. Then the editor of the Daily Mirror published photos of Jeremy Clarkson with a woman who's not his wife. Oh, dear. A bit of gammon on gammon crime. Well, there you go. Filling in some of my cultural knowledge there. Let's have a look at the Beyond Meat stuff. True smoke mirrors. Beyond Meat taps NHS doctor and TV fitness influencer for UK healthy eating campaign. Let's go. I'm loving a bit of fight back on the health front for plant-based meat. It's been a really tedious few years of talking about ultra-processed foods in relation to plant-based meat alternatives, which are healthier than meat. Unambiguously. There's several studies at this point, all different types of studies. There's reviews of studies showing this. Plant-based meat's healthier than meat. And the meat industry has very deliberately and very successfully put it into this category called ultra-processed foods and made all of the health discourse about this to the point where people are extremely confused. But plant-based meat, in many cases, is a health food. As healthy a food as you can have. There is no reason to be restricting plant-based meat alternatives from your diet, as long as they're not too high in salt. That's really the only caveat that I would feel I need to give at this point. Or, of course, if you're like allergic to soy or something, right? But Beyond Meat's made with peas anyways. But I'm really glad to see Beyond Meat throwing a bit of resources into pushing back on this angle, because it's really an argument that we can win. So I think in general, a lot of vegans and even plant-based companies have been too quick to accept this narrative about ultra-processed foods being unhealthy, and have been far too quick to withdraw to positions where people are saying things like, you know, these are a transition food, or you shouldn't have them all the time, or it's, you know, you should be limited your input of this, mainly focus on whole foods and stuff like this. I think plant-based meat alternatives are banging. I have them all the time. They're healthy. They're not unhealthy. You don't need to worry about ultra-processed foods here. And they are now going to be endorsed by an NHS doctor and a fitness influencer. So let's have a read. Beyond Meat has enlisted NHS GP Dr. Amir Khan and fitness entrepreneur Lucy Mecklenburgh to front a nationwide campaign to help the UK get back into healthy eating post-summer. Plant-based giant Beyond Meat is stepping up its nutrition push for its post-summer marketing drive in the UK. The company is kicking off the Beyond Busy September Reset campaign through a partnership with Dr. Amir Khan, an NHS doctor who regularly appears on ITV's Lorraine and Good Morning Britain, and Lucy Mecklenburgh, a fitness entrepreneur and former star of The Only Way is Essex. The two TV personalities join as Beyond ambassadors with the aim of getting the UK back into balanced diets, consistent meal times, and healthier routines after the holiday juggle. September is a natural moment for the nation to reset routines, and we want to show that eating well doesn't have to be complicated, restrictive, or time-consuming, said Ellie Stevens, UK head of brand for Beyond. Through practical advice and delicious recipes, we're helping people discover simple ways to add more variety to their weekly meals, she added. Yeah, I guess this is true for anyone with kids, basically, right? Because this is the end of the summer holidays now. Schools are going to start up again. Or if you're in uni, you're going back to uni. I guess I'm kind of in one of the stages of life where the September reset isn't particularly a thing for me. Not being in a household with anyone who's at school or uni. But for most people, they're going to be exposed to this cycle. And certainly, yeah, like when you're in school or when you're in uni, September seems more significant than January, really, as the start of a new year, right? More significant stuff changes when you're in that stage of your life. And I guess for families as well, it's a very different routine over the summer holidays, and now it's back to school, it's back to the old routine, it's busy again, right? Maybe you have less time to cook and stuff like this. So I think this is a good way for the convenience of plant-based meat to flex a little bit as well. Health eating campaign to focus on the whole family. Let's go. Beyond's autumn campaign will provide realistic advice, quick meal inspiration, and practical nutrition tips that fit into everyday routines, as it aims to shatter the illusion that eating well is complicated, takes time, or needs to be perfect. We're delighted to be working with Dr. Amir Khan and Lucy Mecklenburgh to make this back-to-routine moment easier for the nation. Together they bring a unique combination of trusted medical expertise and relatable life experience, said Stevens. Khan, a best-selling author and leading voice on evidence-based healthcare, family well-being and preventative medicine, will share expert advice on building healthier eating habits for the household by cutting through common nutrition myths and offering simple, evidence-based guidance. He plans to champion realistic, achievable changes to take the stress out of mealtimes, with actions including adding variety to meals and swapping one or two dishes for a high-protein, plant-based option every week. I'm guessing this is meant to say one or two meat dishes. But I mean, it's a good idea to be having plant-based protein in your meals. It's generally going to be a healthy thing to do. Particularly when it's in exchange for what would have been a meat product. Hey, Vegan Christianity, thanks for joining. Nice to see you. Oh, you read my review of Oppenheimer? Thank you, man. That's awesome. My problem with a couple of restaurants serving plant-based meat is they salt it unnecessarily. Most of these products don't need additional salt, but they cook them like animal flesh. That's an interesting one, Smoke Mirrors, yeah. I thought I didn't like Beyond for the longest time because I experienced it in such a restaurant. Making it at home was better. Huh, okay. Yeah, interesting take, Jeremy. Kind of true. A lot of salt and oil at most eating out experiences, right? Mecklenburg, who's the founder of Results Wellness Lifestyle, will present tips on keeping mealtime simple, nutritious, and enjoyable while juggling work and family life, offering practical dinner inspiration and recipes using Beyond products. Like most working parents, my life gets incredibly busy once the school routine begins again. I'm always looking for meals that are quick, nutritious, and that the whole family will actually enjoy, she said. I'm excited to partner with Beyond Meat to share some of my post-workout high-protein meals and our favourite family recipes to show how easily having a balanced diet can fit into real life without adding extra stress. Yeah, I mean, they're really focused on the convenience component here. And I do think that's a massive advantage for plant-based meat. I'm always thinking of it from the perspective of how do you want to try and shape the narrative if you're the meat industry? And it seems quite easy and straightforward if you block off meat alternatives with this implication that because they're ultra-processed foods, they must be unhealthy, which again is misleading and incorrect. But if you're successful in shaping the narrative that way, you really make it a lot more difficult to follow a plant-based diet. Because then you are talking about protein sources and people are restricted to unfamiliar things which they may not know how to use or cook or include in a meal, like tofu and tempeh. Like, this now seems kind of alien for most people who have not had this before. Or you're talking about, beans and I almost hate to say this word, legumes. Like, that feels to me like one of the least appealing ways that you can describe foods. Because I'll just have some legumes. Like, I'm not going to lie, I've been a vegan for about 10 years. I don't really know what that is. Like, people talking about like beans and lentils and stuff like this. So much of this stuff, you have to fucking soak it overnight, or like it's some just absolute hassle to cook. Like, realistically, if you're the meat industry and you want people to carry on eating your meat, make protein seem as though it's very important. And, most people in high income countries are already having too much protein. And then shit on all alternatives to meat as a source of protein. That would be the playbook, wouldn't it? I think plant-based meat is, and always was a fantastic idea and a really great food innovation and healthy way for people reducing their meat consumption or following a vegetarian or vegan diet to get protein. You do need to think about sources of protein if you're not having meat and animal products. And if you're convinced that plant-based meat is going to be less healthy, it puts you in a bit of a bind sometimes. But you don't need to be convinced of that. You can look at the actual evidence on this point, and you'll find that plant-based meat is healthier than meat. So you really don't need to get into such a bind about these things. I'm really pleased to see Beyond Meat pushing back and trying to inject some facts into this. I'm excited to partner with Beyond Meat to share some of my post-workout high-protein meals and our favourite family recipes to show how easily having a balanced diet can fit into real life without adding extra stress. Can celebrity partnerships dig Beyond Meat out of its hole? There's Mecklenburg. The campaign will spotlight Beyond's range of meat-free products, including its signature beef burger and the recently launched steak pieces, through national media interviews, recipe content, social media, and seasonal lifestyle features. The partnership with Khan and Mecklenburg aims to inspire meat-reducing and plant-curious Brits to discover how the company's products can become a delicious, versatile, and convenient part of a balanced lifestyle. September often feels like a fresh start, but health eating shouldn't mean chasing perfection. Small, realistic changes are much more likely to become lifelong habits, said Khan. Yeah, this is a really good framing as well. Like, the easier you make it for someone to do, the more likely that they are going to stick with it and follow through with it. if you say to people you can basically carry on having all the foods that you already enjoy and like, and just swap this type of burger for that type of burger, you're really not asking very much of people at all. Whereas without the use of meat alternatives, now people have got to rethink their whole approach to what they're eating, basically. You are not wrong, Oppenheimer. Beans are based. I'm a big baked beans fan. Baked beans is probably my, end of the world food that I would have stock up the garage with baked beans. Because you can eat them for every meal as well. Zap them in the microwave, 2-3 minutes. So I do rate baked beans, but when I get some recipe where I'm like, oh, fuck me, I got some dried borlotti beans, like what the fuck is going on here? You know what I mean? Sometimes you just want a fat burger as well, let's be real. When you do get good takeaways and restaurants that do plant-based meat, oh, it's so good. There's a couple of good ones near me. We're actually probably a bit spoilt for choice here in Bristol. But when you do get good restaurants that do plant-based meat, it's such a touch. I want to help the nation feel more confident around family nutrition, take the pressure out of meal times, and show that introducing more variety, including plant-based meals using Beyond Meat, can be both simple and enjoyable. The September campaign follows Beyond's partnership with former England footballer Karen Carney. The broadcaster and Strictly Come Dancing winner has been vegan for several years and links up with the company in time for barbecue season and National Hamburger Day, August 27th. The NASDAQ-listed firm, now also known as the Beyond the Plant Protein Company, has a long history of celebrity partnerships. Back in its home country, has teamed up with New York Knicks NBA winning star Josh Hart to promote its new Beyond Immerse line of protein drinks, which have been rolled out in stores across New York and Erewhon in Los Angeles. This move into the beverage category is an attempt to turn around 6 consecutive quarters of revenue decline, with Beyond becoming a meme stock as its share price fell to a record low. It's been forced to deny rumours of bankruptcy, and this month initiated a reverse stock split that converted every 30 shares into one to avoid being delisted from NASDAQ. We were reading a little bit more about Beyond Meat recently, and the shape of their recent performance is one of improvement. They reported lower losses than expected, which is always what you look for in these quarterly reports. Like, did they outperform expectations? And they did in their most recent one. And I think they even had growing revenue outside of the US. Obviously, the US is their main market, but they did see growth in Canada and in Europe. And hey, it looks like they're leaning into some of that success. There's going to be a big push here in the UK. I hope that it can inject some sense into the conversation about plant-based meat alternatives. I've been banging the drum for a little while saying that plant-based meat's healthier than meat. I try to say it at least 3 times a stream, as you guys know. But I'm pleased to see Beyond Meat throwing its weight behind this message as well, getting the NHS doctor on board with the campaign. And they're going to be pushing back on some of the ultra-processed food headwinds, and good luck to them. I'm a big fan of Beyond. I like their products a lot. They're kind of on the expensive side here in the UK, but, for a treat. So there you go. We got Plant Geezer joining at 5 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and set an alarm now so that I don't forget him. And I wanted to have a look in the meantime. Is even plant-based fish healthier than fish? There's definitely a weaker health case against fish than there is against red and processed meat, and even poultry. I think that the most favourable comparisons are going to be in red meat comparisons, but there's no reason to think that it's going to be less healthy, I would say. You will get more contaminants in fish, of course. You get a lot of microplastics and mercury and stuff like that. So that's a risk worth avoiding. But yeah, with plant-based meat, certainly, you're just getting a straight-out better nutritional profile. Sometimes all round. Like, obviously, products vary a little bit. And some of them have like a favorable overall comparison, but do weaker in some areas. Some of them just completely mog, have like higher protein, lower fat, lower salt. But yeah, on the whole, it's a pretty safe claim, plant-based meat being healthier than meat. Let's take a look then at the Salmonella story. Salmonella cases in the UK likely to rise until source of outbreak is found. This is the story that there's an outbreak of Salmonella in the UK linked to imported eggs. Let's read about it. This is an interesting issue because it's one where vegans and animal farmers can agree, which is not to import animal products. You're seeing at the moment in the States, the ranchers there being upset that Trump is going to start importing beef from elsewhere. Of course, that's competition for them. And in the UK, this is a concern for us because we do have higher welfare standards than many of the places that we're importing food from. So the UK is upwards of 80% cage-free in its egg production now, and is soon going to be passing a law to make our egg production here in the UK completely cage-free. But one of the big concerns with that is that we can and do still import eggs that are produced in cage systems in other countries. So, of course, that's not a good thing for animals, and it's not a good thing for domestic farmers who have higher welfare standards that they need to adhere to, and rightly so. That's the standards that we've decided. We're going to make this is the legal minimum, how you have to treat animals. It is then unfair to the farmers as well as to the animals to be importing lower welfare products from abroad. So let's take a look. About 1.6 billion eggs are imported into the UK each year, according to the British Egg Industry Council. Geez. Salmonella cases in the UK are expected to rise until the common source is identified, something that's notoriously difficult to establish, experts have warned. There have been 474 confirmed cases and one death linked to the current outbreak, according to the UK Health Security Agency, with the latest investigation suggesting it's associated with eating imported eggs in cafes in restaurants. About 1.6 billion eggs are imported to the UK every year, according to the British Egg Industry Council, with the number having risen 60% since 2021. Wow, that's mental. So in 5 years, this number's up 60%. It was 1 billion eggs 5 years ago, and now it's 1.6 billion. Are we consuming more eggs? Are we producing fewer eggs? We're importing massively more eggs. Again, like, this is a concern for animal people because we do have relatively good welfare standards in the UK for eggs. And what we want to do is, if you have a situation where you say that imports need to be meeting the same standards as domestic production, which is what we would want, then instead of importing the bad practices, you actually end up exporting the good practices, right? Because if you say, hey, egg producers of the world, if you want to sell eggs to people in the UK, if you want a piece of this 1.6 billion a year eggs pie, you will need to meet the standards expected for UK. But at the moment, we don't do that. We just say these are the standards that you have for producing eggs in the UK. And if you're producing them outside of the UK and importing them, then do what you like, basically. So that is not a good thing. The link to eggs consumed outside of the home is consistent with imported eggs commonly being used in catering, according to Paul Wigley, a professor of animal microbial ecosystems at the University of Bristol. Whey, Bristol. Wigley said, bought in bulk, these eggs are cheaper than UK Lion Mark eggs, and so can end up being used in schools and nursing homes, along with cafes, restaurants, and takeaways. The eggs may be mixed batches from different batches. I assume that's a typo. The clustering of cases suggests there may be a single source. Yeah, these eggs are cheaper than UK Lion Mark eggs because they're made to lower standards. Now, I don't know if there's a link that means they're more likely to have contamination and be a source of salmonella. Certainly, it seems feasible if the birds are in less hygienic conditions and stuff like this, right? But in any case, these eggs made to a lower standard are cheaper. They're imported, and therefore they're undercutting the higher welfare UK-made eggs. And in this case, they're a source of foodborne disease. He added, as far as controls in the future, it's difficult to judge, though identification of the source would help in being able to put specific controls on a producer or country in place. Avoiding runny eggs outside the home, unless Lion Mark eggs, is perhaps the only step an individual can make. I would suggest you're not necessarily going to know if you're ordering eggs or egg-containing dishes, especially in a restaurant or cafe. You're not necessarily going to know what eggs they're using back there. So I would suggest it's pretty good advice if you don't want to get salmonella to avoid ordering eggs and egg products at this point. Well, they say there's over 400 people who have been taken ill so far, nearly 500 people, and 1 dead. So, I mean, personally, if I was someone who ate eggs, I would not be comfortable in that situation with, you know, the waiters assured me that there's a picture of a lion on the egg. But that's just me. Although previous salmonella outbreaks in the UK have been linked to eggs imported from European countries such as Poland, the current source of this outbreak has yet to be identified. For some experts, this makes the current surge in cases particularly worrying. Professor Chris Elliott of the School of Biological Sciences at Queen's University Belfast said, "All we've been told is that the likelihood is that it's been imported. There's a huge amount of difficulty in tracing the origins of something like this, particularly when it's food service. Within the UK's retail industry, they really know their supply chains extremely well. But with food service, less so." Yeah, so you're not really going to know is the upshot there. If you're trying to avoid imported eggs, the most surefire way of doing that is avoiding eggs. It says, lion stamped eggs are from UK hens vaccinated against salmonella. Okay, interesting. So the production systems of the imported eggs clearly are more likely to yield eggs with salmonella. So this is a food safety issue as well then. I mean, I always think of this from the welfare perspective. You have welfare regulations in the UK that are lacking in somewhere like Brazil or in Thailand. And if we are importing animal products from those places, we're importing the poor welfare standards that go along with that. We're also importing the lack of food safety precautions. You got salmonella vaccines in UK hens, and you don't have them for the imported eggs. So Felt a bit embarrassed at how pathetic the trolls were in Jake Lagatar's stream one day when Chris visited. I mean, yeah, I think I've banned a couple of those people from mine. That's quite a nice thing about having a YouTube channel. You can just yeet people. There's a few of the same characters around who like to spend their time trolling vegan YouTubes. Yeah, I've just yeeted them. Good luck to them, I guess. I mean, get a hobby would be my advice, but you know, whatever makes you happy, I guess. He added the number of cases would keep rising until the source was identified, which could take not days but weeks. Okay, so this is not getting concluded anytime soon, it sounds like. Elliot added, my expectation is those numbers will continue to rise until they can not only track the source, but right back to the country of production. It's fiendishly difficult to track the source of a food and ingredient, so I certainly wouldn't be critical of the agencies. They're under immense pressure, and the worst thing that can happen is that they feel pressurized to say that it came from Poland or it came from Romania when they're not 100% sure about that. Geez, the whole thing seems pretty, like, held together with sellotape and optimism, doesn't it? The agencies are under pressure to find where it came from. It's very difficult to find where it came from, so they might just make something up, is what's being said. Just say it's from Romania. Just say it's from Romania. That's fine. We don't really know. We have salmonella-infected eggs now in the UK. We don't really know where it's come from. We can't really verify that eggs are safe to eat. 500 people are sick, one person dead. We don't really know. Professor, can you imagine the press, by the way, if this was about plant-based products? It'd be a very different set of newspapers leading with this story. Professor Brad Spiller, the head of medical microbiology at Cardiff University, said that the fact that this particular outbreak was linked to a common source was probably the most concerning aspect of the cases. He said, it's only once we have a better idea of which countries are involved, we can begin to track down the source. This is how they identified that both of the previous outbreaks seen in recent years that were happening simultaneously and were both linked back to Poland as the source of that. I think until they identify the source won't naturally stop. I mean, yeah, we're just having three different blokes tell us they don't know what's happening at this point. Let's ask another one. Professor Mark Stevens, the chair of microbial pathogenesis at the University of Edinburgh, added that the outbreak was also unusual because cases were occurring at the same time, whereas salmonella cases across the UK were usually more spread out. He said this is obviously a real challenge for the health protection agencies because they have to now identify that source and try to restrict its entry into the food system. It is of concern to have an outbreak of this size, yeah, I'll say. There are thousands of salmonella cases each year, but rarely are they on this scale, where hundreds of people are being infected by a common strain. Stevens added, I think until we really understand the source of these infections, it's possible that we'll continue to see more of them. Yeah, okay, so, I mean, all of the experts are saying this is going to get worse. We're going to keep on seeing salmonella infections and possibly more deaths from imported eggs. We've no idea where it's coming from. And I guess we're importing eggs willy-nilly. And we just hope they don't have salmonella because there's no checks or restrictions on whether there are salmonella vaccines in egg production systems outside of the UK. There are not proper restrictions on egg imports into the UK, which again, this is going to be a rare area where vegans and animal farmers can agree. Importing animal products is a bad thing. And in this case, well, a deadly thing. So there you go. We've got a few different experts saying we don't know where this is coming from. There's probably going to be more cases of salmonella. There's possibly going to be more deaths from this as well. It's associated with imported eggs, which we should have controls on. We should make rules that the food imported into the UK has to meet the same standards as the food produced in the UK. That seems to me like a no-brainer. And while this is ongoing, it seems like pretty sensible health advice to avoid eating eggs, because you're not going to know really where they're coming from, or whether they might be infected, or whether they might kill you. So there you go. Another one to thank animal products for. How are we doing, chat? We've got about 25 minutes until we're getting Plant Geezer joining at 5 o'clock. I'm going to look at the chat this time. Last time, when I had the Plant-Based Universities lads on, I accidentally muted them halfway through the conversation, missed half the interview. So I'm going to make sure I look at the chat this time. You guys have to tell me if I'm messing something up, because I really fucked that up last time. I know what to say. Well, you know what? There's actually another story in The Guardian about, yeah, if Beyond Burger killed someone, we'd never hear the end of it. So true. So true. There's actually another story in The Guardian about imported food. Imported Brazilian meat. UK urged to ban imports of Brazilian meat over health concerns. Brazil has failed to prove compliance with EU rules on use of antibiotics in cattle and poultry farming. Yeah, so I mentioned Brazil before, right? We are importing animal foods which don't have the same standards required of animal foods produced in the UK. We're getting salmonella eggs, we're getting antibiotics in the meat. There really does need to be controls on the animal products imported into the country. There's a reason that we have these rules. And we're just importing products that don't observe them at all. So here we go. Let's read about this one. The UK's leading farming organisations and animal health experts have called for an urgent ban on imports of Brazilian meat in light of concerns over the safety of imports. Okay, so being led by farmers calling for the import ban. Interesting. The National Farmers Union in England and its sister organisations in the devolved administrations wrote to the government on Friday warning that public health was at risk. Brazilian cattle and poultry are feared to be frequently reared with the routine use of antibiotics after the country failed to demonstrate compliance with EU rules on the issue despite a tightening of some regulations by the government. The overuse of antibiotics in farming is a leading cause of the growth of superbugs, which are resistant to antibiotic medicines critical for human health. Next week, the EU will ban imports of Brazilian beef and chicken over the same concerns, but Brexit means the UK can refuse to follow suit. Okay, interesting. So the EU is already going to be banning these imports of Brazilian meat from next week. When's this story published? This is published on Friday. So, like from tomorrow, the EU is going to say no more of that, thank you. We know it's not being produced to our standards. We suspect that there's antibiotics being used here that can produce superbugs. So we're not going to have this, thanks. But because we've Brexited, we might carry on getting the antibiotic meat here in the UK. Imports to the UK from Brazil have risen strongly since Brexit, from about 3 billion in 2021 to 5 billion in 2025. Geez, that's the same as the eggs growth in that time. Is this all the result of Brexit, that we're getting much more dependent on other importers? Whereas before this would have been coming from somewhere else in Europe that has the same regulations. Okay, this is all imports, I guess. Imports of which meat is a big component. In 2024, Brazil accounted for about an eighth of UK chicken imports. Farmers are already concerned about falling meat prices, while input prices for feed and energy have risen. Fear that the closure of the EU market to Brazilian meat exports will be diverted to the UK. Although Brazil has moved to restrict the routine use of antibiotics on farms, an investigation published last year by the Irish Farmers Journal and the Irish Farmers Association found that Brazilian farmers had easy access to antibiotics classified as highest priority critically important in human medicine without a veterinary prescription, and that traceability rules were not being applied. Geez, okay, so the Brazilian government is aware of this problem and they have tried to do something to address it. And they've tried to restrict the use of antibiotics on farms. But this is very interesting. So the Irish Farmers Association is actually the organisation leading this investigation that found Brazilian farmers nevertheless still have pretty easy access to antibiotics. It's probably being used rampantly, even though they're trying to crack down on it. This is some really interesting farmer-on-farmer investigation going on here. Obviously, it's in the interest of the Irish farmers that there are restrictions on Brazilian beef because they want to sell the Irish beef, right? This is the same as the American ranchers getting pissed off about Trump importing beef from abroad. But that's very interesting because that is totally something that an animal organisation that we might have funded might have spent thousands of pounds on, right? Doing this investigation about antibiotics in Brazilian animal agriculture. This saved an animal organisation thousands of pounds because some other farmer organisation was motivated to do it. That's a really, really... That's a nice bit of jiu-jitsu. Saving the animal movement's scarce resources. How can we make more of that happen? We're talking in the Discord server about how beef promoters are some of chicken's best friends, right? Maybe we need a bit more of this farmer-on-farmer dissing. Vegans and domestic farmers would be lockstep on this issue. And it could have been a vegan organisation that spent the resources to do that investigation. It wasn't. It was a farmers' organisation. Very, very interesting how that happened. Well, hey, look, in this case, good for them, right? I'm sure there's a ton of other stuff that they are doing that we would disagree with. But the Irish Farmers Journal and the Irish Farmers Association, in this case, good for you. Colin Noonan of the Alliance to Save Our Antibiotics said the rise of antibiotic resistance is a global health crisis. Each year it's directly responsible for about 1.14 million deaths and associated with 4.71 million deaths. We know that resistant pathogens can spread internationally on food. So why are we still importing meat from countries like Brazil that are allowing the irresponsible use on intensive farms of even the most critically important antibiotics? Tom Bradshaw, the president of the NFU, again, boo under normal circumstances, but perhaps not here. Tom Bradshaw, the president of the NFU, which represents farming businesses, in July met with the Secretary of State for the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Angela Eagle, to demand a ban, but the government has so far refused one. This is really a moment that we can have a big bit of agreement with British animal farmers. There are not that many where we get to be on the same side, but imports of animal products has always been one. And do you know, we have a bit of research on this, on Bryant Research. This is the percentage of different groups agreeing that the UK should put restrictions or bans on low welfare imports that would not meet UK production standards. So this is the general population. 84% agree with that, only 5% disagree. And if you ask livestock farmers, that 84% jumps to 92%. So this is something where livestock farmers agree even more strongly than the average person, even though for the average person, 5/6 of people are in agreement as well. But in this case, is even more than that for livestock farmers. I really feel that this is a moment where our interests are so nicely aligned. There could be some nice, creative, across the aisle kind of advocacy to be done here. Maybe we can get NFU and PETA at the same advocacy lobbying events, right? Look, when you agree on a given issue, I think that, I absolutely think there should be restrictions on imports of animal products. Clearly, it's a public health issue, as well as an animal welfare issue and an economic issue for domestic farmers. There's public health concerns. We've got salmonella from the imported eggs. We're going to have antibiotic resistance from the imported antibiotics meat from Brazil. There's a ton of good reasons to stop doing this. Now, of course, if you're the government, one reason why you would want to allow that is to reduce the price of animal products. So we've got these imported animal products which are holding down the price. They're undercutting the higher standards expected of British farmers. They're introducing public health problems and diseases, and they're causing outweighed suffering to animals. I think that restrictions on imports of animal products is a really, really strong policy ask and something that should be a no-brainer for the government. We know that we need to be consuming less meat and animal products anyway. So a restriction that's going to protect public health, protect our food sovereignty, and protect animal welfare. This is going to be something that has benefits all round. I think that's definitely something we should advocate for. A spokesperson for DEFRA told The Guardian, our experts have sought urgent information and assurances from Brazil as part of a rapid assessment of beef and poultry production systems to ensure our high food and animal welfare standards are being met, while closely monitoring market impacts of the EU ban. This government will always act to protect our farmers and the public with our world-leading robust import controls, which are in place to protect animal and public health. Well, clearly not. This is what a DEFRA spokesperson's saying. Government will always act to protect farmers and the public health. Clearly not. They're allowing imports of animal foods which are undercutting British-produced animal foods, making animal welfare worse, making things worse for domestic farmers, and introducing threats to public health. And now there's somebody dead from salmonella from imported eggs. We don't need to be doing this. Seems like a no-brainer. In their letter to Eagle, the NFU's presidents said, ensuring the health and safety of the nation is a core responsibility of any government, and the UK has long recognised the risks posed by antimicrobial resistance. UK farmers have worked hard to cut antibiotic use and maintain some of the highest production standards in the world. We should demand the same of our imported food. True. Hear, hear. Like a stopped clock, the NFU is right twice a year. And it's each time they talk about this issue. We should demand the same standards. It is unfair on British farmers to be held to a higher standard while we're still importing lower standard animal products. This is a definite area where vegans and animal farmers can agree. There is really no sense to the current system, and we do need restrictions on imported animal products. Failure to act will not only expose the nation to a public health risk, but damage consumer confidence in beef and poultry as a whole. Yeah, I mean, like I say, in many cases, you are not going to know whether the meat that you're eating is domestically produced or imported. A lot of the British marked meat products, that can include processed in the UK. So when you're buying meat that has a British flag on it, that doesn't necessarily mean that the animal's reared in the UK. They might well be reared in Brazil, but the meat was imported and then processed somewhere in the UK, and that allows you to slap a Union Jack on there. So there's really no way of reliably avoiding imported meat, and particularly, again, when you're eating out, you don't know if you're getting British meat or if you're getting something that's been imported from somewhere with very lax attitude towards antibiotics in animal farming. Something to think about. Again, the safe, surefire way to ensure that you're not getting any of the antibiotics or any of the nasties is to not have animal products. That's the most simple way. Some of the beef and poultry in the market currently has antibiotics in it, and it's contributing to superbugs. Some of the eggs in the market currently have salmonella. We don't have a reliable way of knowing where any of the beef and poultry and eggs have come from. And so the way to protect yourself against those risks is to not consume beef and poultry and eggs. But we do need reliable restrictions on imported animal foods. The government is already under pressure on food safety after an outbreak of salmonella in imported eggs that killed at least one person and made more than 200 people ill earlier this month. Yeah, nearly up to 500 now, we've just been reading. Previous investigations have also found poor monitoring of meat and farm products entering the UK since Brexit. So this is not the first time we've been aware of this issue of poor standards of animal products being imported since Brexit. The UK's failure to follow the EU's lead in banning Brazilian meat imports will also further complicate the status of intra-UK trade with Northern Ireland, which under post-Brexit agreements follows EU rules on food and farming. Farmers said it would also hamper efforts to realign the UK with the EU for ease of trade, which the Prime Minister Andy Burnham is seeking as an economic boost. Liz Webster, a beef farmer in Wiltshire and campaigner against Brexit, said this is a test of whether Britain genuinely intends to rebuild Europe's shared food safety perimeter or preserve Brexit divergence. The Brazilian government was contacted for comment. I don't know about this, to be honest. Has Brexit made things worse for animals? Well, it means that we're getting a higher percentage of our imported animal products from markets with less regulation. Like there's an EU-wide ban on battery cages for eggs, for example. Now they have what they call enriched cages instead, which are an improvement, but hopefully still on the way out. But if we're getting eggs, you know, since Brexit, we're getting a lower portion of our eggs from Europe and getting more of them from Brazil or Thailand or elsewhere. Then it does mean probably things are coming from worse animal welfare standards. I mean, a bright spot of Brexit was our independent regulation of cultivated meat, and we were reading about how the EU realignment might have implications for that. It seems like that ought to also extend to imported, unsafe meat products. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see if those standards actually extend to include imported animal products, which could have food safety issues. And, you know, the National Farmers Union and the Irish Farmers Association are on the right side of this one. They are the ones arguing for greater restrictions on imported animal products to the UK. That would be a helpful, constructive policy. It would be good for animals. It would be good for farmers. It's one of the rare things where vegans and animal farmers can agree. So we'll see. I wonder if any animal organisations take the opportunity to link arms with the NFU here and join together on the calls for restricting imports of animal products. In this case, Brazilian meat. We'll see. Right, guys, it's 5 to 5. We've got Plant Giza joining in just 5 minutes, which means probably not time for another article right now. But I do have a productive way that we can use 5 minutes, which is over at action.thehumaneleague.org. I'll pop the link in the chat here. We are at T-minus 5 minutes to Plant Giza. Let me make sure I've got my notes lined up there. And we'll do a little bit of Fast Action Network before the hour. Let's go. 4-week streak. We're back on it. And we've got 5 minutes. We're on 8:10. Let's see how far we can get. Contact form. Let's go. Land O'Lakes. Good, good, good. How's everyone's Fast Action Network? Anyone in chat beating 8:10? 8:13 now. Tous les jours Vietnam. Let's get after him. Looks like I'm getting some of these before the king. Or they're deleting the king's comments, which is also possible. That actually seems more likely than me reaching these before Tristan King, is that they're deleting Tristan King's comments. Which also counts. That's always a nice sign that you're getting to them, you know. Why does this have to be in Portuguese? I guess this is the Brazil branch for Unilever. We've been doing Unilever for a little while, hey? Magnum, Dove, Hellmann's Mayonnaise. These are all the Unilever brands that we comment on. Not had any movement from them. We had 2 victories since we started doing this, which was Subway and what was the supermarket? AW? These are American brands, so I don't actually know what they are. Land O'Lakes. Interesting gimmick. Hey, Tone, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Nice to see you. We're doing a little bit of Fast Action Network. We've got Plant Giza joining in a couple of minutes. In fact, maybe I'll make this my last post. $8:17. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Right, that's my alarm. So let me get this set up, and I'm going to remember to look at chat when he joins so that you guys can confirm that the sound is working. And we don't have another incident like plant-based universities. So let's do this. I'm going to unmute that. Okay, that's going to fit quite nicely, I think. Oh, no. All right. All right, here he is. Jake, hi, how are you doing?
Hello, mate.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
Mate, 1 second. Have I done something?
My audio's not going through on here, is it? Test, test. How's that?
You might have. Hang on. I think I might have. Hang on, mate. Sound. I've got it on my mic. Hang on.
Can you guys hear Jake?
MacBook Pro speakers. That should work.
Good man. How's that?
Got it. Sweet.
Good man. Nice.
Good to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, good, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, mate. Thank you. As good as can be. What about yourself?
Good stuff. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate you joining, and yeah, looking forward to hearing all about your background and your activism and everything else.
Yeah, no, honestly, mate, my pleasure, man. Any chance I've got to speak with a fellow vegan or advocate, mate, is my pleasure. So thank you, mate, for the invite and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to getting into some of your story, and yeah, I've written down a few things to ask you, but I imagine will be kind of fairly free flowing. I know you've got like a few different lanes, if I could put it that way, that you operate in. Yeah. But why don't you tell me a bit about your background, your sort of origin story, and how you came to be the plant geezer?
Yeah, mate. So where do I start, man? I'll be honest, mate. I think my background and my growing up and the circles I was involved with, just kind of growing up, whether it was childhood, teens, 20s, was the complete opposite of anything that I'm doing now. It was anything that I was involved in, the people I was surrounded by. It was just a completely different planet, really, mate. Growing up, it was something which stands out for me was, I never had anything serious to kind of focus on. I couldn't take life seriously until I found animal rights, mate. In the last 6 years, last 6 to 7 years. So yeah, like growing up, mate, it was football, it was parties, it was beer, it was festivals, it was holidays, and I've always been like the kind of person to take things a bit too far. Like couldn't just go on holiday for a week. I had to go for like 3 months, and things like that. I couldn't just go out on a Friday. I had to kind of go out 3 days in a row and just squeeze every last trip out of life, really, in terms of my own pleasures and things like that, and enjoyment and stuff. And yeah, mate, I think when was I 26, 27, came across vegetarianism, and it was at the time when I kind of had a realization, okay, I need to sort my life out and stop being silly, stop drinking as much, stop enjoying myself as much. So it came at kind of like the perfect time. And my brother turned vegetarian, and he said, basically, I'm eating plants. And I was like, what do you mean? And up until this point, I hadn't really thought about it. It was kind of like the first big hit. There were a couple of things before that I realised now were seeds planted, but that was the main thing for me. And I started eating plants with him. And the more I looked into plants, the kind of more I discovered about veganism and animal rights and things like that. So admittedly, mate, the very start was just food, just diet, health, and how can this benefit me? I know it's better for in the animal perspective, but it's kind of my health, my muscle building and things like that.
Were you into fitness already? You were already a fitness guy?
Yeah. Into my health and fitness, mate, on and off. So this kind of like was like a health route, and then it got to around 2020, and I set up a food business because veganism was on the rise. Plant-based diets were certainly on the rise, you know. So I got into the food game and set up a little mini business and things like that. And then the more down that path I got, in terms of like, you know, building my page and meeting vegans and following vegans back and things like that, I then got deep into the vegan thing. And then it got to a point, mate, where activism came about. And that was just at the point where I'd seen enough, and I was like, hang on, this is beyond horrendous. You know, this is worse than anything I could ever imagine. And that's when I got into activism, mate. Yeah, around 2.5 years ago. So I mean, I suppose loads of people get into it through food. But that was
Yeah.
my entry in, mate. Yeah, it was definitely the diet thing, you know.
That's so interesting because from what I've seen, people. So the study I'm thinking of is the Thornalytics X Vegans study, which you might have seen. This is a lot of people bring this up as a lot as like 80 something percent of people stop being vegan, right? And the biggest thing that they all have in common, the people who used to be vegan and gave it up, when asked what their main motivations was, they are overwhelmingly say that their main motivation was health. Whereas compared to current vegans, they overwhelmingly say that their main motivation is about animals. But there's definitely an interesting thing that happens there where people can get into it from a health perspective, and that is enough behavioral distance that you can actually be a bit more objective when you look at what's going on with the animals, and you don't have to
Yeah.
be coming from a defensive stance, right? Because I think that's the main thing in activism and advocacy is you encounter a lot of cognitive dissonance. People think I don't want to have to change what I'm going to eat, so I'm going to work backwards to get some beliefs that can justify this. But if you've already changed for a different reason and now you're thinking about animal ethics, you can be a lot more objective about it. You don't need to be tied to your own habits of eating meat if you've stopped for another reason, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that is actually. I've never actually looked at it from that deep of an angle. There's a lot of people I meet, honestly, mate. Like yourself, you know, I'm sure there is. There's a lot of people who, you know, they say, yeah, you know, I saw something to do with beef, you know, and then I started eating chicken, and then I went down to fish, which is exactly what happened with me, you know, like reducitarianism, and then got to the point where it's like, you know, I've got no other option but to cut it all out, you know, and stop, you know, with the food side of things, you know, exploitation and whatnot, you know. But at the same time, like you say, it does pop up a lot where people go, oh, you know, I did this diet and then it didn't work. But surely these people came across what me and you did, you know. Surely would they get into the plant-based thing, and you can't help but see animal rights content, you know, when you do get into stuff, it automatically is linked, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of strange how the people who do go back, they don't get as deep as a vegan does. It's strange. I can't work out what it would take, because they definitely know. You know, I know there's a lot of talk at the minute about people, you know, changing and going back on their morals because they didn't know. But I don't believe that these people didn't know. I believe that they just choose their selves over the victims. You know, but maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe they don't see it
Yeah,
as
no, I think there's definitely more. It's harder to be ignorant in like today than it might have been 20 years ago, say, where it probably seems quite feasible in a different time that you could have been into it from a health angle and not been exposed to the animal rights side. But today that would seem kind of a strange journey, right? To not
yeah.
have that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, I mean, it didn't take long for me at all to start, you know, delving into the horrendous industries, just, you know, aside from food, like I say. And it also made me uncover things that I didn't realize were there. Like I said, seeds were planted, and you know, when I got into the plant-based world and started looking into the animal side of things, it was then that I thought, actually, I remember that time when I was 12 and my cousin said something about a sausage, and my auntie was like, "Shut up, don't talk about sausages." And then you know, actually, I do remember that time in Cyprus where I saved a kitten in a bag. and then it was kind of like, wow, and then it just kind of unraveled a lot of things that was hidden beneath.
Yeah,
It's
that's so
crazy, and
fascinating. It's like
and
you
it,
knew it all along on some level, and you were kind of discovering it fresh.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, mate. Yeah, it's crazy, really, and which is why I think it's important that people do get fed, drip fed over the years,
hundred
and
percent.
I think that no matter what you do is a seed planted. Whether you shout down a microphone, a speakerphone, or whether you leave a sticker on a lamppost, I do think that it all adds up, man.
100%. Yeah, I agree. And we do. I do some studies of like interventions and what's the best type of message to be persuasive to people, or the best type of media and stuff like that. I think realistically, it is all additive, right? And every time that you see the billboard and then a TV ad or online ads or whatever it may be, like all of these things kind of add up to a sense where people are like, kind of know, even if they haven't really acknowledged it yet.
Mm,
And
yeah,
that's an interesting point where people
very
get to.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting that you said that you were never that serious a guy before, and you definitely seem like a lad to me. Like I can definitely believe you're a football lad and into clubbing and
yeah,
everything else like that. Like that's
yeah.
nice. You have that like relatability about you. It's interesting that this was like um, enabled you to like discover a more serious side of yourself in a way as well. Hey,
Yeah.
there's definitely a stage. I used to be quite into looking at happiness related research, like life satisfaction and stuff like this. And there's two components of it, which is hedonism. That's the fun side. That's what like happiness looks like on a poster. And then there's also what's called eudaimonia, which is more like meaning and yeah, that's
Fulfillment.
the main like components of it, having some sort of meaning and interaction with the world, making things better and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm gonna look into that actually, mate. That sounds right up my street because it was like, I don't know how to put it. It was like I was kind of running from reality. It was kind of like for years and years, I was just going that one step further with alcohol, drugs, parties. It was kind of like I wanted to escape reality as much as I possibly could. Not even in like a depressing way. Not even like, I've never been depressed.
It's
I had
just
a good
fun, isn't it? Getting
upbringing.
fucked.
It's
It's
just, but
fun,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
it's just like, oh, let's do it. Let not
Yeah.
not just let's do it. Let's really do it. And that was my mentality. And I think looking back, it was not having a purpose. It was not having an aim. It was just, I know that real life is bullshit. I know the system is corrupt. I know that this is all going to be over soon. So I'm not taking part in it. And that's kind of the mentality I had, which is why I just, I was the one to call up and say, do you want to go on this trip? Do you want to come to this festival? Do you want to do that? And I'd always say yes. And then, like I said, looking back, it's like that was I was just running away from something that needed, like a hole that needed to be filled. And it took me, this many years to realize that was animal rights, that this is the only thing I can take seriously.
Yeah.
I can't look at anything in my past where I've took anything serious. I can't. It was just a joke. Life was a joke, and now it's like, right, okay, this is what I'm seriously concerned about, and this is what I put all of my time into now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I will. I'll look into that, man. The two things you said there.
Yeah, yeah. Eudaimonia is the other one. Give that a Google, and because I thought of that immediately because I have like somewhat of a similar experience where, well, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me if this describes like the kind of thing you're talking about. When you feel that it's almost like a bit nihilistic, like pre-vegan, and you're like, well, there doesn't seem to be any kind of inherent point to life. And I think a reasonable response to that is like, okay, I guess the point must just be to enjoy myself as much as possible. If there's nothing that is like deserving of my attention or prioritization, it must just be about having as much fun. And then it's like obsessively doing that, right? And that's why you kind of really throw yourself into the party because you think, well, this, if anything is the point, it must be this. And then once you discover there's actually something more purposeful, it's supercharging in a way because you already have that kind of almost obsessive mindset and like maximizing, going after it, and then once you discover something, you go, oh, actually there is something purposeful that I could do and contribute to. Now you have to throw yourself into that. You've got no choice but to be a full-on animal rights activist now. Hey,
yeah, mate, I don't know if you're speaking from your perspective and your experience, or whether you like you seem like some kind of therapist to me now. You're like telling me exactly how it is, and I'm like, oh, how does he know this?
That's so relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I get you, mate. Yeah, it's fascinating, really. And then you start to think like, oh my God, that was a waste. No, it wasn't a waste. Don't talk like that. It wasn't a waste. It was, it's led you to where you are now. But then it's like, oh, all that time wasted, that energy could have gone into something good. But now it is. Don't worry, And it's you're kind of on that loop then. But nah, it's like it is what it is, man. Some people are 70 and they turn vegan and wish they did 50, 60 years ago. And that's going to be the case with everyone, isn't it? I wish I would have done this, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But nah, definitely feel like I've got a purpose, mate, like yourself now, and something beyond yourself, isn't it? I do think that doing something with your life that is beyond yourself is the obvious thing to do, really. Whether it's people who do jobs, that help other people or help animals, or whether people are an activist for the environment or whatever, it does make sense to kind of come into this place and be like, okay, this place is messed up. How can I make it better?
100%. Yeah. As almost an extension of the same type of thinking, really, because it's about like maximizing positive mental states in both cases, right? In the first case, you're like, I'm trying to get pissed here. I was like that in my youth as well.
Yeah.
But then it's, no one would really deny it's got to be almost objectively more important to prevent the type of scale of suffering that's on factory farms than like for me to have a fun Friday night. And so it's kind of the same mindset. You're still concerned with maximizing the same kind of things. I guess just being less selfish about it, being like concerned with the well-being of others, and then you get to that's the party animal to activist pipeline.
Yeah. I can imagine you had a similar kind of growing up, Chris, like going out and enjoying yourself then and whatnot.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I first came across the idea of vegetarianism in a university lecture, and it took me a few years to do anything about it. But I definitely had some years in the interim which were like peak hedonism and getting to a point of thinking, is this all there is? Like, this is like the most fun that I could possibly be expected to be having, and it's kind of still not that satisfying somehow. And then for me, that was when I was like, okay, there's got to be something more that you can do to, better the world and better things for others. And factory farming is just such a huge problem, such acute suffering, and something that we can really affect. Like, it's not unreasonable that you or I might save thousands or even millions of animals in a lifetime if you do effective advocacy over a number of years. That's totally possible, right? I'm sure you have an estimate of how many people that you've helped go vegan, for example, and stuff like that. Like, each of them would have been eating 150 or 200 animals per year otherwise. It's totally not unreasonable that you can say, I've saved thousands of animals. Like, objective, you can kind of make an estimate of the count. That's such a cool and worthwhile use of time, right?
Yeah.
But you're much more so oriented to direct advocacy and outreach than I do, certainly. Like, I've never done like street outreach or stuff like this. I've done a little bit of, I post online and stuff like that. I'm a bit of an armchair activist, which, is valid, but I definitely admire what you guys do in terms of going out, speaking to people on the streets and so on. Are there things from your experience doing that really work or that really don't work?
I actually don't know, Chris, to be honest, man. It's like, you've got your opinions and stuff, and then you read stuff online and it kind of makes you think differently. It's like, oh no, maybe not, maybe this. I don't know. I don't know. I was speaking with someone not long back. I can't remember who. I think it was at Campo, and you've got these different methods, and someone said, look, I love what you do because you do the soft method and you do the hard method. And it's like, well, there's got to be an audience for everyone, I went vegan eventually because I was eating a pizza, and my brother described the disgusting process of cheese while I was eating it, and that is was the final switch. So you say that to a lot of people, and they'll go, "Oh no, you can't do that. You can't make people feel bad." But it worked for me. So, if I'm outside of a slaughterhouse, videoing little lambs going into the bullying facility, and people make eye contact with a sheep, it could change them that way. Or like you say, with the street talks, they could change that way. So it's just like, I don't actually know the answer. And like yourself, you call yourself an armchair activist, mate, but at the end of the day, you've got a piece of the puzzle. There's no, you could change 10, 20, 30% of people more than me without even realizing it, just from your calm, scientific approach, and things like that. So I just think we'll never know, and it's best to just attack with everything we've got, whether it's people who do what I do and go into these places and risk a few kicks and punches. It could be putting stickers in pub toilets, it could be graffiti, it could be scientific talks like yourself and things. So I just think just attack, just go all out, scatter approach. I think would describe it the best. Just go all out on everything we possibly can, and the more attention we draw in some way or another will result in eyes, which will result in vegans. So
I really like the answer. There's that's a really, really good answer. Firstly, you said I don't know. Like, that's very rare that anyone says that to anything seemingly. If you ask something that you don't know, most people sort of try and confabulate as if they do know. But people are very hesitant to say they don't really know. And so a lot of people end up kind of improvising an answer and then defending something that's like, I don't know if I even actually believed this to start with, right? I just kind of said it.
Yeah.
But we should totally be open to different things that might be more effective. And the other thing as well, like even when you're doing the outreach, you might get a sense of what works for you, but equally like a perspective that, this is a small cross section. It's certain, you're a certain type of person, you're speaking to certain types of people. All of those things have an impact on what's going to work and what's not. I do think that making people feel bad probably is part of it, as much as it's like not a very nice thing to do. And the main thing in like the psychology of meat reduction is cognitive dissonance, where people have they have like clashing beliefs or beliefs that clash with their behavior, and they try and resolve that dissonance. And I think that's also something that can apply to vegans. I think that is very nice and convenient for us to believe that the most effective ways of advocating are also the ones that make us feel the best, which is probably not going to involve like awkward interactions with people, like showing people the footage that they don't want to see and so on. So it's quite nice and safe for a vegan to think, well, that must not be effective, when really that's driven by motivation of not wanting to get your hands dirty in that kind of interaction sometimes. And it's much safer to make nice vegan food and stuff like this. That's totally an important part of it. But I think that the making people feel bad, I feel like most vegans can remember a time when they were in dissonance before going vegan. So that's like part of the journey as well, right? You have to have a bit of motivation to do things differently, which probably is going to involve feeling bad, even though that's not a nice part of the process, right?
Well, this is it, mate. Like I said about the pizza, I was well on my way to veganism, I suppose, when I was eating that pizza, and I was like, oh, it's all good, I'm eating cheese, I'm only eating a bit of chicken, I'll get the leather thing, I'm not going to buy leather again, but I'll just eat this pizza. And then it took that car journey with my brother to say, do you realize what you're eating there? And that is the thing that sticks in my mind. Now, that is the most uncomfortable I would have been within that 1 or 2 year period, and that's what made me change. So I think people, I think you've got a group of activists, who will say that you shouldn't be that way, you shouldn't be forceful, you shouldn't be aggressive, you shouldn't do a Tash Peterson, for instance. But I think they're saying that because they have been in a position where they've made someone feel uncomfortable, and that has made them feel uncomfortable. So they've gone, oh, that's not the right way.
Yeah.
But discomfort is where change happens.
100%.
I know that when I'm going into these slaughterhouses and these farms, I am so uncomfortable, it is untrue. you know,
Oh,
I
I
know that
bet.
this is a big thing, a big exposure that I'm going to pull off, and I've got to get through this next 20 minutes. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to die. I don't know if I'm going to get beat up. I don't know if I'm going to get arrested, whatever. But I know that this discomfort is going to result in something powerful, you know, where someone might watch it and go, bloody hell, you know, sheep's heads, guts all over the floor, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's wrong to say that you shouldn't create discomfort because it's, it works. Does it work on
100%.
everyone? No. You know, does it work on everyone? No. But it is very powerful to make people question in such an abrupt manner, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a bit like working out as well, isn't it? It's no pain, no gain. You're almost like, you know, when you're exercising and then you tear the muscle and then the growth happens afterwards in the reparation. I think that's probably quite similar to a lot of these difficult social interactions on the path of veganism.
Mm.
In the moment, people are not going to react well, probably for the most part, and maybe they'll come up with their excuses. And, you know, this is like where you get the cognitive dissonance. And I suppose one's hoping that afterwards, in a moment of quiet reflection, these people go, okay, maybe they had a point there, or at least like prompted to think about it further. I think it's pretty rare that people really change their mind in real time, particularly if they haven't really ever thought about it before. Most people, with regards to veganism and eating meat, are just like what we call pre-contemplation, where they've just never really thought that it might be otherwise. And so when an advocate comes up to them, they're thinking about this for the first time ever. And that's kind of bizarre from our perspective, because we think about this every day. We can't imagine someone like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's as if somebody would be coming up to you and talking about like some maths that you've never heard of. You'd just be like, well, I don't really know, right? I don't know what you're going to say to this. But then hopefully later on, for these people in the advocacy context, there's like, yeah, reflection and proper processing of that, and really, growth after the pain of the interaction.
Yeah, I often wonder, mate. Funnily enough, going back onto your point about the gym, only 60 minutes ago was I in the gym videoing my face in a overhead press to send to clients to say, this is the face I want you to be pulling on your overhead press, so I can relate to that.
Nice.
But I often wonder, like, you know, people at work or just people you bump into, you know, who are not vegan, they'll be like, oh, you're vegan? And then you go, yeah. And they go, why? And my answer to that is always, I can either show you or I can tell you I've just seen a lot of evil. And they'll go, oh, okay. But I don't think that hits very deep.
I quite
Now,
like that.
if I was to kind of say, if they said, you know, why are you vegan? And I'd go, because it's fucking horrendous, you know, and then go off on a 10-second rant to emphasize how serious this is. Only then do I think, would it stick in their mind? And then they might go home and go, oh my God, you know, he's vegan and he said that. Maybe I should look into it. Whereas if you kind of just downplay it, which is what a lot of people do, I think there's a term, and it's called something to do with silence. I can't remember the term, where you just kind of, you know, ignore or downplay or don't speak of it. That's not going to sit in their mind. But when you're forceful and you are straight to the point, I think it works, man. You know, and you know, what again, I still don't know the answer. I'm not saying that we should all go around with megaphones and stuff, but it is, you know, it does work. It does sit inside the mind of a lot of people.
100%. I definitely think that vegans should be brave in being honest about that, because you're totally right. A lot of people will, again, you just want to avoid the difficult social interaction, right? So you learn that people don't like when you start talking about factory farms and slaughterhouses, and it makes for an easier conversation if you just say, oh, it's because I want to help the environment or something. Like, that's much less offensive to people. It's also dishonest, though. I've probably been guilty of doing this in the past, but you feel kind of dirty afterwards, because you're like, I was lying then. That's not why I did this. I just was trying to ease along the interaction a little bit. So I do like to be honest about it. I'd say, I often say I don't want to support factory farms as a response when people say why, because I think that's, you know, opens a route where people want to ask, well, can't you get animal products that are not from factory farms? And the answer is like, not really, not reliably. There's no mandatory marking of welfare standards. there's all kinds of meaningless, like Tesco and Sainsbury's put on their meat products from trusted farmers. That's not anything. That's not a certification scheme. There's no inspector that goes around for that. Like, at least with things like RSPCA, there's like some sort of infrastructure that is meant to enforce certain standards, but for the most part it's just like complete nothing, no commitment whatsoever. And if somebody was to take that project seriously, of like, okay, I guess I also agree that factory farms are bad, I'm going to try and avoid getting stuff from factory farms, you're going to be mostly vegan. You're going to be avoiding like most animal products in the situations that you come across.
Yeah.
Surely some vegans will say that's not really like good enough as an answer, and we'll speak a bit like about your run-ins with some of the definitional purists.
Oh wow, yes.
But yeah, I think that like pragmatically where that gets to, you start off with almost everyone agreeing, yeah, factory farms are bad, and then quickly discovering, if they take that seriously, it's actually not really straightforward to avoid factory farms at all. And well, the only sure way of doing that is to avoid animal products.
Yeah, that's interesting, mate, because I've changed my approach with talks lately. But at the start, I would play their game of welfareism in it. So like that they would say things like, "Oh, I'll get my meat from this farm," and then you go, "Well, where's the farm?" Instead of me saying, there is no such thing as humane slaughter. There is no such thing, I used to play them at that game and say, "Well, where is it then? Come on, show me." Well, you're lying straight away, aren't you? Because you don't go to a good farm. So I actually used to play that game, and I do believe that's a good method. I really do, because you not all the time are you going to turn around and go, "Well, you shouldn't be doing it anyway." This is what veganism is. We should have this message every single time. And I don't believe that. I believe that there is a time and a place to use different methods in terms of bad welfare, good farms, this, that. I do believe that. And it also makes people tie themselves in knots, which is why a lot of people will say, they turn vegan from a Joey Carbstrong debate, because of the way he lets people tie themselves up in knots in regards to their beliefs on welfare, So
yeah,
there is definitely, room for that, definitely, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. I think that welfare-led messaging is something that like the Leslie Cross descendants, if you could put it that way, might be a bit more critical of. I know that you've had run-ins with some of those people, and I guess that your main objection to the way that they operate is that they are mainly spending their energy being critical of other animal advocates, right?
Yeah, it's incredible, mate. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what they say is the truth, but I compared it to selling a phone, and I said to him, you would be terrible salespeople, because you're looking at the phone going, "This is an iPhone. It makes calls. It sends messages. It takes pictures. Buy my iPhone." Instead of going deeper into the emotions and the psychology of the buyer to say, look at all the memories that you could keep on this phone, or something like that. So it's not what they say, it just doesn't solve an issue. And we as animal rights activists want to change minds. And if something changes the public's mind, and something doesn't really change it, you're going to lean that way to the one that changes it, not specifically of what they're saying. So I think I don't know if you've been attacked, Chris. Everyone I speak to has been attacked in some way. But
I had a bit of a run-in with a guy called Roger Yates, who I code as sort of in that camp, although people tell me he's a little bit less objectionable.
I think I know who Roger is. I haven't met him, but I think I can picture him.
Yeah,
from like a video or something.
He's a nice bloke, basically. I don't have any serious beef with him, but yeah, we had a bit of a debate on a related topic.
Yeah. It's that this mob, excuse me, they first just started commenting stuff and saying stuff to me, and I just didn't understand it. I'm like, what are you telling me this for? What the hell? And like I said to George on a podcast not long back, I said, when you meet a vegan, you're like, oh my God, you're vegan. When you meet an animal rights activist, if you were walking down the street and you bumped into an activist, you'd be like, oh my God, like this never happens. You're a legend. Regardless of their methods, they are a legend in my eyes,
Yeah.
It's like the hate that they come with and the attitude, and it's like, whoa, what? I think that everyone is a legend who is fighting for this cause, okay, I might not agree with everything that people do, but I'm not going to slate them. I'm not going to attack them with this attitude and this weird energy. And that was my problem with them, mate. Yeah. And hopefully now it's put to bed. And there's actually a girl who's come forward. She wants to talk soon about how she actually gave up activism because of these people.
Interesting.
And it's horrendous, really, because, you know, she was on TikTok. She was getting, you know, I think some of her videos, they might have hit 1 million or, you know, good few 100,000. She was hitting people and she completely stopped. Now, I find that absolutely disgusting, you know. Okay, can she improve her message? Yeah. Can she improve her ways? As we all can. But the fact that she stopped and now the victims have been, you know, the victims have suffered, it's detrimental to the cause. That's just one example of how bad that these people can be, you know, such a negative impact that they can have.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you standing up for people like that and saying so, because it probably is the case that animal activism is selecting for sensitive people, all else being equal, right? You have to have a degree of sensitivity to be tuned into animal suffering and, you know, think that it's important enough to be spending your time doing. And probably that does mean that an unfortunately high percentage of people who are doing pro-animal content and stuff could quite easily be shoved off it by the wrong type of negative feedback. And that's so unhelpful, because I totally agree with you. I mean, there are going to be like more and less optimal ways to do things, but basically we're all pushing in the same direction. And I think it's totally unhelpful to be insisting that it has to be expressed in a certain specific way or it doesn't count. I mean, I don't want to draw you too much into giving your own thoughts on all this, because we kind of we don't end up doing the infighting, right? But it seems to me that a lot of the ways that they want to express the message are quite like narrowly philosophical. It has to be about exploitation specifically and use specifically, and it's not about cruelty. And it's like people have different ways of thinking about these things. Like if that's how you think about it and you mainly characterize it as a problem of exploitation, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. For me, I mainly think about the suffering aspect, and I definitely think more suffering is worse, and, you know, there is less suffering systems that's better, and so on. But it doesn't like feel like just the natural way that I would think about it to be expressing that in terms of exploitation. It seems like very academic and like vaguely Marxist to be talking about exploitation. So for me, I'm like, I would be surprised if that was the most compelling message to be saying publicly. I think cruelty is something that everyone knows what that is and can relate to immediately and say this is bad. And yeah, I think that if you can point to cruel practices, people can discover this is pretty much rampant and universal throughout animal farming. There's not really a reliable way that you can avoid that, apart from avoiding animal products. But yeah, I think it's unhelpful to be like very restrictive on the particular messaging that one has to say. I think probably different things are effective for different people, and certainly we shouldn't be like putting people off who might otherwise be a voice for animals.
Yeah, that it was that black and white thinking, that like weird mindset of it's got to be this way because of this, and this being people are turning back from veganism, they're not vegan anymore, and it must be because of this. And it's like, why does it have to be? There's no proof of that. And no. I guarantee if I was to call up 10 ex-vegans, they could tell me what veganism was. They could say, yeah, you know, leave animals alone kind of thing. But they just choose their convenience over their morals. And they just go, well, I'm going to use that as an excuse, but I can't be bothered anymore. I don't care enough. That's all it is. It's just people, they don't care enough. And, you know, you could sit down with an ex-vegan from now till Christmas, and I don't believe that you could change their minds back, you know, with these certain methods. I just think that it's people are either consistent with their morals or they're not, and it doesn't necessarily come down to messaging or anything. They know, these people know. You know, obviously some people are going to think that it's a diet or whatever, but, you know, the vast majority of people who were involved with the vegan world, they're not stupid. They know the truth. They just don't care. And then it's kind of like, then it's like the blame game. It's like, who can we blame because they don't, they don't think like us anymore. We've got to blame someone. Oh, it must be them over there who said this. It's just like, nah, that ain't the case, man. It's yeah. I think they've gone that far down the rabbit hole. Some people, I think as well, they expect change to happen fast. I'm well aware that this is going to take a very, very long time, and it's almost like they think that if you just said it in this way or did this instead, like in 3 years, everyone's going to be vegan. That is not the case, man. It's weird. It's weird how someone can think like that. It's weird. It's strange. But yeah, definitely more of a negative impact than positive, man. The amount of time I spent trying to talk to him, because I'm open minded, like you, like everyone.
Yeah,
I'm not like allergic to criticism. I'm just like, okay, let me think about that, learn about it, and see if I agree. And after months and months of analysing, I didn't agree.
Yeah,
just did not agree. And thank God that there's hundreds and hundreds of other people who also agree and are not falling for that weird way of thinking, mate. Yeah,
I think that's really cool. I think it's quite brave to be the person who says, like, I'm not going to go along with this particular framing, because especially when it's coming from quite vocal and combative group like that, I think it's quite cool for us to have somebody who's going to say, look, I don't think this is right, and there's another way of thinking about this, and there's like a pluralistic approach where we can have different strategies and so on. We don't have to all be part of the same like definitional religion. But yeah, there's another cool thing about what you do on the health and nutrition side, because I do think that I think that a lot of the people, a lot of that 80 whatever it is % from the Formlytics who are ex-vegans, like I say, the main thing that they report in common is health having been the main motivator, and I would guess that a lot of them are various types of like fad dietists of like sampling some, now I'm going to do keto for a bit, now I'm going to do vegan for a bit. The majority of them report having been vegan for less than 3 months. So this is not people who were like seriously into it for a long time and then kind of tore themselves away. For the most part is people who are like, oh yeah, I did veganuary maybe once, right? And then they count as having had a vegan diet at some point. Now they count as an ex-vegan on that number, which isn't really proper. But to the extent that the people are well, actually, so yeah, there's another thing I said before that. I'm one thing I always say is that I think the difference between a vegan and an activist in terms of the impact on animals is much, much bigger than the difference between a vegan and a meat eater.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to be now proactively doing things to reduce the number of animals which are being harmed or exploited, however you think about it, elsewhere. Whereas when you're a vegan, all you're really doing is opting out of being part of the problem. So I think getting vegans to be activists of whatever sort they are capable of, I think is a more important project really than getting meat eaters to become vegans. Of course, both of those are like necessary parts of the solution overall. But to the extent that you can have some influence, which is like discouraging vegans from doing activism because they don't know how to do it properly or whatever, like that's really going to slow down the rate of change. That's not what we need at all.
Yeah. I mean, just by this one girl being affected by it, the reach that she could have had or still had, that is way worse. That, them putting her off her work is way, way worse than like convincing 20 vegans to go back. Like far worse. It's because the internet's so powerful and views are so powerful. And she'd only been doing it a while, and she had messages off people, thanks for what you do, and your typical messages about, oh, I'm thinking differently now. Nice. And it's disgusting, man. It really is disgusting. I can't believe. I cannot believe what they're like to this day, mate. It's gone over my head a lot, and I've been thinking about it and stuff, and it's just mad. It's nuts to think that there's people just attacking other activists, the 0.01% or whatever it is, whatever the number is.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, like you say, mate, I was with Dave, the 40-year-old vegan, the other day, and he said when he was at Vegan Camp Out, 6 people came up to him and said, "I am now an activist because of your work."
That's awesome.
And I think, I said to him, that's better than 50 people coming up saying, "Oh, I'm vegan." And I think because
so
he was
cool.
an ex slaughter worker, and he's turned activist, so he's gone from that end of the scale to this end of the scale.
Wow.
And I think people look at that and go, "Oh my God, not only has he gone from there, but he's also got to there. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I can't just go vegan. I've got to do what he's doing, surely, because he was an ex-slaughter worker, or something like that." So it's powerful, man. It really is powerful, the internet. And the good news is the said female should be back soon. We're going to do the talk, and
excellent.
But she's just one example. There's a lot of people who, wouldn't have spoke of it and just been like, But I think you can get through that, though. I think if you've made the leap from non-veganism to veganism and then to activist, to come back out of activism and to go back is going to be far easier than the initial switch from non-veganism. So, thankfully, it's not all lost. I think that people will regain their confidence and stuff.
That's excellent. Yeah, activist retention there.
Yeah. It's so powerful, like you say. They're so precious. People who post content. It's worth gold. So. Yeah, I've noticed a few more people pop up lately, mate. I don't know about yourself, activist-wise, more people, especially on TikTok. I don't really go on TikTok, but when I'm on there, I'm like, oh, that's someone else talking. That's someone else saying it. Even if it's just literally a face with a quote, he's like, that's good, man. That's got X amount of views. That's still good,
100%.
The most simplest forms of activism do work.
100%, yeah. And because I think that quite a normal thought to have when considering whether to do some sort of activism or posting online, especially, it's very easy to compare numbers and say, well, Earthling Aid's got 500,000 followers and I'm never going to be at that level, so maybe it's pointless. I do think that there's some argument that there's only so much room for very popular people because there's only a certain amount of attention to go around, basically. But there's so much diversity in the characters that people will find to be appealing. And I think that you're quite a unique guy in the type of bloke that you might appeal to, and probably able to reach people that would not find Earthling Ed to be compelling, or whatever other activists that you might think of. Everyone has their kind of taste in people, I guess. And who they find relatable, people from the Midlands, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
People from the Midlands, well, there's another Midlands lad. Do you know what I mean? Need that kind of level of connection, or even just people that as well. If you are an individual who knows other people and you're posting things now that's their friend posted that, it's a bit more meaningful, or their family, right? That's close to home. The other thing I think about it as well, in this brave new AI world that we're going into, where everything might change and everything's being recorded, I'm quite happy to have lots of myself on the record saying in 2025 and 2026, factory farming's bad, guys, we should stop doing factory farming. I have a sense that this is all part of a big cosmic history book that is being written. I'm quite pleased to have been saying it out loud and be on the record. Do you know what I mean? Future historians could look back and see that we were saying this now before it was cool.
Nah, honestly, mate, you're right, man. It's so obvious. The message is so correct that it cannot go any other way. It's like I've never been so sure. I'm not saying that we're going to have a vegan world in 20 years, but it can't continue with that many people suffering with this cognitive dissonance, and this many people getting active, and this many people knowing a vegan, and X amount of people watching that documentary. It can't not happen. Surely to God, and knowing that, and this isn't even I think that. I know that people have got to change. It's got to happen. You know what I mean? And it's kind of annoying. And if we're saying when you've got say people who are dissing others, and then you've got negative comments or whatever, just anything to sway you back the other way, that doesn't hold any weight anymore. it's like I used to think, oh God, what about this? And it's like, nah, I am 100% certain in what I'm saying, and I'm 100% certain based on my life experience that this won't continue forever. It's just impossible, man. And you think like you ask people, you say, oh, why are you vegan? And they say, because of an activist. I saw this, or I watched that, and it's like, well, we just keep doing that then. Another activist pops up, they change 10 people, they change 10 people, and then it's like, how long before change happens? We are in change, we're in change, and there's no two ways about it. I do think that the rise in population and longer lifespans and things like that is obviously having an effect, because there's a lot of people to kind of sway, and there's more and more people popping out. But I just can't see how good, normal, thoughtful, caring people can not change. Like, what will it take? It's crazy. But then on the other hand, you do hear stories of, for example, Earthling Ed's family who are not vegan, and you're like, oh my God, wow. They're not vegan. Like, what would it take for them? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's a very strange game, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think there's reasons to be optimistic about that. We did, someone on my team did a review earlier this year about, is the rate of veganism rising? And it's the biggest review that's ever been done on this question. They looked at like 800 different surveys from all around the world. They used, I think, like 150 of them that directly asked people if they're vegan, something like that, over the last 10 years, which was 2015 to 2025. And there's a graph in that report that is the ultimate hope graph that you're like hoping to see when you open up, is a line graph that's going, a bit of variance, but it's steadily going upwards. We're going in the right direction. It's at a slower rate than any of us would like. And, I think Will felt there was like a bit of a surge in 2020-ish, and then a few years where it seems to have backslid a little bit. But big picture, zoomed out, worldwide on a large enough time scale, we are going in the right direction. So I think there's cause for hope there. I think a big part of that, in my perspective, I should be really interested to hear your views on this, is animal product alternatives just getting better and cheaper. I do a lot of stuff on alternative proteins, plant-based meat alternatives and stuff like this. They're getting cheaper for the first time in the last few years. For the first time ever, you're seeing, the plant-based burger is cheaper than the beef burger in the supermarket. Did not used to be the case. Like, even 5 years ago, you could plant-based products like 2 or 3 times the price, pound for pound, compared to meat from animals. Now, mostly as a result of meat having got so much more expensive and plant-based products staying roughly the same in most cases, the plant-based products are cheaper now. And that's a super novel thing. Like 2025, this happened for the first time in the UK. I think that's going to be really rocket fuel quite soon, because price is the main thing for most people doing their grocery shop. Like, oh yeah, if this one's cheaper, I'll get those burgers instead. That's going to be huge, I think. Like, that's a real pull factor away from animal products that has just about tipped the balance and is going in the right direction. Now, of course, like from the meat industry perspective, the big attack line on plant-based alternatives is that they're ultra-processed. This is a bit of a hobby horse of mine. I think that as far as I'm concerned, most of the ultra-processed hysteria that we're in the midst of is a meat industry psyop and is aimed squarely at plant-based alternatives, which for the most part are healthier than meat. They have lower levels of fat. They have, in many cases, higher protein content, particularly protein as a percentage, right, when you're considering fat as well. They have higher fiber, lower saturated fat. There's a bunch of studies showing that they are healthier. I know that you're a bit of a nutrition nut and a gym lad. I always say that plant-based meats are like a really good source of protein. If they don't have too high salt, have at it. Do you have a particular take on that? I know you do your meal service, which I gather is like mostly whole plant foods. Are you a plant-based meat guy at all?
Yeah, I am, mate. Yeah, the more time goes on, the less of a mock meat person I am, but I'm not against them at all. I'm I'm not saying, you know, I eat them every day. I wouldn't say that to the clients to eat them every day. Obviously, you might have a different opinion on that based on your research. But nah, look, I'm just the same as I was when I was eating meat and dairy. You know, I try and keep it 80%, 20%. So, you know, the same as when, you know, before I was vegan, I'd be like, okay, let's eat clean in the week, and then on the weekend enjoy a burger or whatever. So I'm not against it at all. I think that, you know, if you was to eat mock meats every day and mock meats make up 80% of the diet, then maybe we would run into trouble. I'm guessing we would. Maybe, I don't know what the kind of science says, but you know, the cleaner we eat, I think the better. But that's not to say that it's harmful to have a bit of processed rubbish, you know. Especially when we live in a world with so much processed meat and dairy anyway. So it's not like people are going from, you know, the cleanest, most natural piece of flesh that they could ever get to, you know, the worst of mock meats. It's we live in an unnatural world with processed food, and I think people need to walk around Iceland, as in the supermarket, and look around, look into people's baskets who are not vegan, and see what these people are putting in their bodies, man. Because for some reason, this process thing has only came out as veganism has climbed.
Yeah.
No one cared about this processed food like 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't have a Beyond Meat burger, you know, you can't have a sausage. It's like, hang on, you didn't give a shit before veganism was a thing,
It's
you know what I mean? So
orchestrated, yeah.
it's very, very sketchy, man. Very sketchy. And it just makes me laugh, mate, especially being involved in the gym game. You know, you speak to people and they're like, oh yeah, I wouldn't eat this or that. I said, mate, you know, just pull your protein powder out and just look at the back of your protein powder. You'll never see so many ingredients in your life, you know. But all of a sudden, this burger, this Beyond Meat burger, is like the worst thing on earth. And it's like, nah, man, come on, you know. Like, we live in that world. We live in this world where things are processed, and that's that, you know. But yeah, very, very sketchy to say that it's all come about since the rise of the plant-based foods.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, big parts of this are really open secret as well. There was years ago, there was an ad in the Super Bowl and ads in the New York Times that were attacking plant-based meats. They're too processed. They have methylcellulose, which is a scary ingredient that is difficult to pronounce, and stuff like this. And it was paid for by a group called the Center for Consumer Freedom, which is a lobbying group that was acting on behalf of Ranch Men of America. Like, all of the meat lobbies were literally, it was just their marketing agency. And I think that's where you can trace a lot of the processed food hysteria. I don't want to go too much off on one because I could talk about this forever, but it's very
please do.
yeah. The whole process, I mean, the whole process thing, this wasn't a way that people were thinking about health and nutrition even like 10 years ago. Like I said, we accept that a lot of food is processed. We understand that that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's some foods that need to be processed in order to be healthy to eat, like the raw milk thing. A lot of people are like, oh, you're going to process foods, going back to raw milk. Well, that's a great way to get food poisoning. You know, obviously milk's like dairy in any case, but pasteurized milks are going to be safer to consume than raw milk. But people are now following this intuition that the less processed, the healthier. And they have an idea that, you know, a grass-fed steak is going to be healthier than a processed meat replacement. It's just not the case. It's just not the case at all. Like, red meat is something that we know is increasing your risk of heart disease and cancer. We have a pretty good idea of how that happens, to do with too much saturated fat in the case of heart disease. You can have this alternative which has a lower level of saturated fat. Like, we understand the mechanisms involved here. It's to do with too much saturated fat. And we know that this one's got less than that one. There's a bunch of studies now which show this, but they're all in the last few years since this became a big attack line against plant-based meat. I feel like we knew this 20 years ago. If someone had said 20 years ago, hey, maybe a beef burger's healthier than a soy burger, people would have been like, well, no, it's not, is it? Clearly.
Yeah.
But now, because plant-based stuff's actually quite good and quite cheap, they've got to have another attack angle on it. So now it's like, make everything about processed instead.
Now it's a threat.
Absolutely.
Now it's a threat. Now we'll come out with this propaganda.
Absolutely.
It's far too scripted. Like, you know, I remember being younger, and I went to school with a girl who was a vegetarian, and when you're that age, you kind of don't really think about it. And she used to have all these, like, mock meats and stuff, and not once would anyone say, oh, you shouldn't be eating those or whatever. And you just it wouldn't be a thing. But it's just far too coincidental that now that it's a threat, that now everyone is like, oh my God, look at that mock meat, it's going to kill you. And again, it's playing on people's emotions, isn't it? Like, you've seen what goes on with the news and propaganda, and I won't say certain things because that's another complete other ball game, but like just manipulating people based on fear. What better way to manipulate people to keep your profits in check by saying your health is going to suffer? It's natural to slice animals open, the less processed that is, and the more we get it from, the natural of the animal and all that, the better it's going to be. And it's a simple thing when you look from it, when you zoom out a bit and you think, oh, that's clearly the reason why people are now talking about it. Because even when I first went vegan, it was like, why are you vegan? Oh, okay. And they almost had this, like, thinking back, they had this idea of veganism actually being healthy, or plant-based diets being healthy. And I noticed that was at the start, and then it's like, oh, okay, so you're opening up this shop, that is going to be healthier food. It's going to be like a bit of a twist on a dirty takeaway. It's going to be a bit of a healthier takeaway. And then in the last year or 2 years, it's like the conversation moves swiftly onto processed food and chemicals,
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to watch because I've seen that shift, in the last 6 to 7 years. And Joe Rogan's got a lot to say for it, hasn't he? And people like that, and Big Beef Daddy and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of these industries have very sophisticated way of pushing out their talking points. They're like developed in some focus group, and then a notification goes out to all the Fox News presenters, and it kind of filters down from there. And everyone right of center knows that the attack line now is to talk about ultra processed foods. It's very organized in a way that the left of center never seems to manage in the same way. Everyone's like singing from the same hymn sheet all the time. And it goes with vegan issues, and a bunch, like across issues, people will notice this same trend. The example that I have in the top of my mind, I don't know if this passed you by, is very much an American thing, where suddenly all the media was concerned about critical race theory, like about a year and a half ago, I want to say. And a lot of people on the left were like, this is such a specific thing. Like, this is definitely manufactured. It's so talking points devised in a focus group and then filtered out through their kind of media frameworks. But it's, definitely one of like the default things that people have top of mind now when talking about veganism. Hey.
Yeah, it's a shame, man. And Matt, I'll give you another example that just popped in my head. I remember when my brother turned veggie or plant-based, I can't remember at the time. He gave up meat and dairy anyway. And yeah, this must have been like before this was like I'll say it was like 2017, and we were sitting in my mum's living room, and Coronation Street was on, and Gail Platt, Gail Platt, everyone knows Gail, don't they?
Yeah.
She said something like, pass me the butter, the proper butter, not that synthetic rubbish. Or something like that, and we heard it, and my brother was like, "Did you hear that?" Then, and he rewound it, and she said it again, and he was like, "See what I mean?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "It's all propaganda." Look, and then we looked at who sponsors Coronation Street, and it was like Cadbury's, and then Cadbury's is obviously like a dairy thing, and you're like, "Oh my God!" And that was the first bit of dodgy marketing that I ever seen, kind of thing, and it makes sense, and it's like, who watches Coronation Street? People who buy butter because they like to have their tea and toast and sit down and watch. God, let's get this in their head that this butter is synthetic rubbish, and real butter, and don't sway off our real butter, kind of thing. So it's interesting, man. And that was like 2016, 2017. So
100%.
I mean, you would never have heard that line in Coronation Street over the last 100 years or however long it's been going. It just happens to be now that milk is under threat, dairy is under threat.
And it sounds like conspiratorial to say, but these things totally happen. You can sponsor a line in a soap opera like that. That is like product placement, isn't it? You know, it's like that definitely is something that happens. I feel like a lot of vegans are nowhere near cynical enough when thinking about this kind of thing. I
Yeah.
like thinking about like the saboteurs and the what would the meat industry say. One thing that I do think about it, well, if you were trying to sabotage the animal movement to some extent, you're sort of an undercover animal operative, let's say. One thing you would want to do is to try to spread ideas that are going to be counterproductive but seem like feasibly something that vegans might say.
Mm.
And I think that it has been suggested with a lot of like the definitional purism, like what it'd be great. It's great for the animal industries if there's a group of vegans who are really putting off other vegans from doing activism, for example. And then another interesting thing about that, when you do come across such people, if there is a saboteur and they're doing their job well, they should be like planting these ideas and letting other people run with them. And then in 9 out of 10 cases where you encounter these ideas that are counterproductive, it's not going to be said by someone who's on the payroll. It's just like someone who's kind of got misled and gone along with the wrong idea here. But yeah, I definitely think there's that kind of stuff that goes on.
Yeah, 100%. I just before I go back to the disciples, someone told me a story. A few people have actually said this, where an undercover, anti-vegan, so to speak, actually got married to a vegan activist, then
Yeah.
ended up having kids with him and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know how someone could, take it that far, but apparently
that's
it was a thing.
cover.
And in terms of the disciples, it's very. I spoke with this to George. I don't know if you've heard mine and Carnism's chat, and it was like, what better way, like you say, to divide and conquer, to infiltrate and then cause all this rowing, and then to put people off it and to cause confusion and put doubt into people's minds and things like that. It is the perfect technique, because let's face it, what they've done is, like I said, it's very clever. If it was like a psyop, it's clever because it's being correct. It's actually being correct, but it's also dampening the message and dampening the effectiveness.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, you are right in what you're saying, but now that activist isn't doing it anymore. Now her messaging has changed to, use and exploitation instead of violence and cruelty. So even though they're right, it's the violence and cruelty that changes the most minds, and it's the softer words that don't. And that's just from experience, like that. I'm not saying that you can't use certain words or use certain methods, but that is what has happened. The messaging has got soft with some people, so it does make you wonder, man. It does make you wonder. I know that Jimmy Aspey spoke about this. He came back onto Instagram after so long, and he's like, "What is the matter with you people? What the hell have you done? What have you done to this message? Like, people were waking up, and now you've just gone and completely changed the script to something that doesn't even sound bad."
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting topic, man. Really, if you were to employ people to do it, you would choose the most convincing people, obviously, the best actors, the cleverest people as well, because these people are quite, they're quite intellectual. But what is interesting with this mob is a lot, or should I say the most of their content is not against anti-vegans or, these industries. It is, most of it is on purity and talking about other people, which is very, very sketchy. I mean, these are the people who are supposed to be wanting the best for the victims and making a change. These people are more involved than us, really. The way they go on and the effort they put into it, like, they should be more, but the fact that they're not posting about what we do is very, very suspicious.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a possibility?
It's certainly a possibility. I mean, I wouldn't like to say for any particular individual. And again, I do think that most people who seem like they could be plants are probably just naively misled. If there are plants, they're probably like 1/10 of those people, if that, right? And they've kind of convinced others to go along with it. But it's totally possible. And like again, I think that most people are not cynical enough. When a lot of vegans have the attitude of like, no, surely the meat industry wouldn't do that. It's like they're doing the worst stuff. They're doing thousands of times worse stuff than this. A little bit of dishonesty. There's nothing to these people, right? So yeah, I think it's totally a possibility. And as you say, there are confirmed cases of this in the past where it will actually oftentimes be governments where there are like organized political groups who are deemed to be subversive, and sometimes that can mean animal rights groups. But this happened with like the Black Panthers and like civil rights groups where they would have, feds at the events. And one thing, what's the? I think there's like a book or a reference from the CIA, which is like a guidance on how to do. Is this what MK Ultra is? Maybe people in the chat know. There's like some sort of like written CIA guidance onto how to do infiltration and sabotage. And one thing that they'll do is try to bait people into doing illegal things. Because then, of course, you get arrested, you go to prison, you're not going to be doing much animal activism anymore. Like, that's a pretty good way to get people right out, like, solve that problem. But yeah, it's totally expected that there's a lot of money at stake. These are billion, trillion-dollar businesses. Absolutely, yes, it's going to be worth having a few people on the payroll whose job it is to just, like, try and subvert the opposition. Yeah, spending like £1 million a year on that seems like nothing in this.
Oh man, yeah, it's a bit like Pablo Escobar burning his money to keep warm, isn't it? Like,
right.
if you compare the meat and dairy industries to the drug trade, to think how big and powerful they are and what they do to maintain power or to protect profits and things like that, it makes perfect sense that there would be a little group of people who were being paid to infiltrate the world's most effective influencers, as they call people. So it is very weird, and I don't know. Yeah, like you say, it wouldn't be all of them, because blatantly, some people are vegan, and you can kind of, people have met them, you can tell what they do, but there is an element that is very sketchy. Scripted texts, repetitive things, almost like they've been taught to say these things because that's what affects the mind of people the most, and things like that.
Yeah,
I've noticed it, man. It's interesting. We'll never be able to say for definite, but
that's the thing with these. Is like, it can seem to make so much sense. Of course, we're never going to know, right? And it's probably counterproductive to be pointing fingers on balance, because most of the times we're going to be wrong. But I do think it's a helpful frame, nevertheless, to be like, what would Mr. Tyson want us to be saying and thinking, right? What would like the big meat industry people on the other side, what kind of narratives would they want to further? Because it's a useful frame to bring to one's own thinking, because sometimes you think, if I'm wrong about this, I might be doing the other side's work. So it's always good to have that like critical kind of frame as well. By the way, I know we're 10 minutes past the hour. I don't know if you have a hard stop at all, or like need to be getting on with your evening.
No, mate, I'm easy, mate. I can talk or wrap up as soon as you're ready, mate. But I can talk, mate. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm not stealing too much of your.
No, you're good.
Your Sunday away.
Another thing, stuff. Chris, there, I was going to say about that is, with the disciples and that element of strangeness and whatever, it is kind of like their only hope, because there's nothing else. They've got the chemicals and they've got the processed food and they've got the health and the natural thing going on, but it's a method that makes sense to infiltrate and to cause a stir. But also, I don't know if you've noticed, I think that there's actual proof of this, I'm not sure, of bots being sent out, or actual people with multiple accounts, and they actually comment on all the videos and stuff, and put all the vegan posts down. What's interesting, I don't know if you have come across these, but I've noticed that depending on the week, depends on which type of message I get off trolls.
Interesting.
So an example would be a few weeks ago, I noticed that on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, I was morally superior. I was the one who thought I was better than people. Oh, you know, you get off your high horse. You're not morally this. You think that you're better than everyone. And I had the same type of message.
I mean, let's be real.
I had like the same message over the course of like 3 or 4 days, and then the week after was crop deaths, and then all the mice, all the moles, all the rabbits, all the birds, all the foxes, and then it was like the crop deaths argument, and then the next week would be like processed food or whatever. So it kind of comes in waves, these comments, and it's like, surely that would be scattered and it would be random. It wouldn't just be like, you know, this comment that week and that. So again, interesting.
Well, did you see that Reddit post on, it must have been on the vegan subreddit, or I guess it was in the AMA subreddit, where someone posted that, now of course this is unverified, right, but I think this is true and I've read about such operations. Someone posted that they were employed by whatever it was in America, right? Did you see this post? And their job was to go in the vegan subreddit and post that they were having health problems and all this other kind of stuff. And they said that they did, you know, you get your week's talking points, and that's what everyone, you know, there's presumably hundreds of people with this job have to go and like, upvote and spread all the vegan misinformation on Reddit and other platforms,
Or it could have been like a double bluff where the vegan has gone on and pretended to be there, and then they're saying that to get that in there. There's all kinds of wars going on, man. But the health thing fascinates me, because you'll know this, like, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, you talk to people and you say, okay, you're saying that I'm unhealthy, you're saying that you're healthy. Can you not look at me and look at my test results and admit that I'm actually healthy, and this is solid proof that what you're saying is bullshit? And it's almost like they can't even answer that. It's like they're so brainwashed again by whatever propaganda is hitting them that they can't even just go, actually, you do look okay, or maybe you are healthy. It's like I think it's a mix of brainwashing and cognitive dissonance and not wanting to, you know, accept the truth. It's weird. Again, they can't just look at it and go, you know, maybe you are right. You know,
that's true. I think that's something where the other side, as it were, has really overextended, because in terms of like average healthiness, we have to appeal to studies, and then, like, you know, people on more plant-based diets tend to have better health outcomes and stuff like this. But it gets into, you know, people can kind of bring up arguments on either side to say, I think the plant-based side's very decisive personally, but there seems to be an argument able to be had there. Whereas the claim that it's impossible to be healthy on a plant-based diet, well, now that's a very specific thing. Now you only need one counterexample to prove that that's incorrect. It's not impossible. It's like you have one example, therefore it's possible, therefore that claim's wrong. So I think they've really overextended there. Like, you have one example of a healthy vegan person, and if you're a healthy vegan person, you can just point to yourself, and already that can't be correct. So if you're operating on some sort of nutritional model that says you need to have animal products in order to be healthy, well, here's a counterexample to that. So there must be something wrong with your model, right? Whereas like the you know, where the health argument really should be, or the proper health argument, is going to be, you know, looking at epidemiology, looking at long-term disease risks, and so on. But yeah, I think they've kind of overextended on the idea that it's impossible to be healthy without animal products. You only need one example to the contrary, and people go, "Oh, yeah, I guess that must not be right."
Yeah, and it's so difficult to prove it as well, because like, how many things can you eat and how many things can you not eat while being non-vegan or vegan? It's ridiculous. The variety of foods that you can eat and stay away from and overindulge on and not eat enough of is incredible. And it just takes a couple of idiots to go, oh, I tried, but, you know, oh, my hair fell out and I couldn't get out of bed for 3 weeks and I lost my eyesight. number one, that is like impossible anyway after 3 weeks of eating anything, pretty much.
Right.
And number two, you haven't told us what you're eating. You haven't told us
Yeah.
what your diet was like before. You haven't told us whether you dropped your calories by 1,500 a day or nothing like that. So, and it's just so easy to believe, isn't it? Oh, he did it, didn't work.
Yeah. I think that's a really cool part of what you do on the health and nutrition side. And this is, I was going to say before, but we got talking about the saboteurs, which is much more interesting. To the extent that people who move away from veganism are doing so because they have whatever kind of health problems, that's a really cool role that you're able to fill in, is like retention in nutritional advice. Obviously, people have to take B12 supplements. There's other supplements which is probably a good idea to take. Probably if you're lifting, you want to have protein powder. I have a lot of protein powder personally. There's all sorts of things that you can, help people to not get wrong. You mentioned not having enough calories. I think that's quite a common one. That people can fall into, right? Is that in line with what you see in terms of your nutrition and fitness advice?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, it's crazy because it's the most common one. I think is tiredness, fatigue, dizziness, and I think what it's interesting because what else can also be a problem is people who just start supplementing. So this could all come in January, 1st of Jan. Everyone joins the gym. They clean up the diet. They start taking supplements. I don't know about you, but I've took supplements before and it's made me all dizzy and I had to stop taking supplements. So it's like, I was dizzy. Yeah, but what were you taking? Did you overindulge on B vitamins or, you join the gym. Did you drop carbs significantly and start eating salads? Bang, there's another reason. What did you swap out? Oh, I used to eat loads of cottage cheese and now I don't. Okay, look at your calories. All of a sudden, your calories have dropped. So there's so many things, and to me, it's obvious. I could fix it like that with most people. It's like, okay, tell me what you're eating. Sweet, do this instead. Done. But they won't give it the chance. They, and so often all the time you hear these things. Oh, yeah, but I know someone who she lost her teeth or whatever, and it's like, I know that's not true. I know it's not true.
Yeah.
But when someone is so biased and they love that taste of meat and cheese and breast milk, they find any excuse to stop. And but now I see it all the time, mate. Yeah, and what's fascinating, I did a post the other day on my coaching page, and it was aimed towards certain people who are now promoting supplements who have told me that my diet is inadequate. But now they're promoting a drink with like 18 different essential nutrients in. I'm like, you can't. Let's just say I was nutritionally deficient. Like, you can't tell me I'm nutritionally deficient and then start promoting supplements. If you don't need to. So it's chaos. It really is. But I think having that side, mate, that two angles. Plant Geezer was a page that promoted health and fitness. It was a muscle building, fat burning, plant eating kind of page, and it turned into activism. And I've gone back down that route now and split my activism into two, because I thought, okay, if I'm not going to get people with the truth and the ethical side, then at least I can try and get them with the food and the nutrition side. So yeah, and also there's an audience there that agree with veganism but don't find it easy. They find it difficult. So that bridges that gap as well. It's like, okay, I agree with veganism. Now I've bridged that gap to, this is how easy it is. So it's almost like different angles of attack, having the two different pages, the two angles. So I think that's important as well. Stemming from, again, what we said earlier, that there's that many different methods that can be used and should be used.
100%.
And no, not one is any more better than the other, as far as we're aware.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good idea to split it, because sometimes it's easy it's like intuitive that basically the more reasons you give, the more convincing you'll be. But that's sometimes not really how it works. They can kind of dilute each other. Like if you are doing the health and fitness page, and then every fifth post or whatever is like factory farming's bad and slaughterhouse footage or whatever, people will get a sense that, okay, this is kind of your underlying motive, and maybe you don't, like, you're just using the health stuff as kind of an advocacy technique. Or likewise on the other side, if you're mainly posting about advocacy and then you occasionally post about health, people are like, well, you're kind of just like seeing that as an advocacy tool. It's quite interesting in your case, you actually genuinely were on the health side first and found all of that to be good for your nutrition and for your fitness before you were even thinking about the ethical side of it. So you really had like fitness benefits from eating plants, hey?
Yeah, I'd say so, mate. Yeah, one thing I've noticed is recovery is a lot better.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I used to play football, and every Monday after football, I'd be absolutely aching. My legs would be stiff, and I'd be hobbling around for a day or two. And that stiffness and aches and pains is less. And I don't think there's any studies on recovery. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any studies on, inflammation and recovery. But everyone says the same. They say,
That's what I hear, yeah.
And so I recover a lot better and less injuries and stuff. And but having people like you, mate, like I went to say earlier, but I got sidetracked when you said, like, I'm an armchair activist and you people are out there doing this. You wouldn't believe the peace of mind it brings to see people like yourself who are scientific, who can read studies, who are a little bit, more intelligent, let's face it, than most of us. I can't read studies, mate. Do you know what I mean? I look at it and go, I'll just believe in Chris, whatever Chris says.
Good. That's my motto.
But to have people like you and like Mike the Vegan, and just clever people, man, who can read it and actually debunk it with, I'm okay debunking stupid arguments, but when it comes to the nitty gritty, it's important to have your knowledge as well and your level of understanding to say, no, because look at this, and look at this meta-analysis or whatever it may be. So it's good, man. And like you say, everyone's got that piece of the puzzle. It brings peace of mind, just from the way you people speak. It's like he knows what he's on about.
Nice.
So it's good, man.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Plant chap, they call me.
Plant chap, yeah. Gentleman of thy plant.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is kind of shocking on the scientific side how much deliberately misleading science there is, because as well, when you're interacting with that kind of level, that the other person knows they're being dishonest, and a lot of the red meat slop in certain health algorithms, people know they're promoting stuff that is going to make more people die young. That's quite a thing to live with, isn't it? Like all these red meat health influencers. I mean, the influencers are like, who knows how much they know, right? And who knows how many are getting paid and stuff like this. A lot of them are just hopping on the bandwagon. But at the level of the papers, like I read and interact with papers from people who are corrupt scientists. There's no other way of saying it. Like they're pretending they're wearing a scientist's outfit, but they're really like meat industry actors. And they totally know. And I really despair when I think for too long about that, the existence of these people, because it's like, there's just something so sold out in your soul that you decided this was a good idea to do. Do you know what I mean? They don't have, there's no pleading ignorance for the people who are writing the papers. People are developing things that they know is not true, and they know is going to cause more people to die young and cause more animals to be spending time in factory farms and in cages. It's absolutely unforgivable, some of these people. Like, that is no way to spend your time on this earth.
Nah. And it all boils down to money and taste. That's the only thing. If meat tasted like shit and dairy tasted like shit, they wouldn't have these opinions. And now they're just trying to cling to things to try and justify it and to try and put people off the other side and promote their products or whatever, or just spread propaganda about meat and dairy. And it all boils down to just that. And I don't know about you, as you get older, you can kind of read people like a book now. I can kind of look at someone and be like, I know you're full of shit. You know what I mean? Just from the way that you're saying that. And I reckon you could get like 20 like non-vegan advocates who are like, carnivore type people or whatever. And then you could get like 20 unknown vegan advocates, and they could talk about unrelated topics. And just from the way they speak, I reckon I could pick out the carnivore clan or the
You reckon?
cholesterol clan.
Yeah.
I swear, man, like you just know they're full of shit. You know what I mean? I know that you're full of shit, and I don't know if that's just me or maybe I'm being, too, what do you call it? But I can see it, man, and I just know they know that we're right. You know what I mean? They know
Yeah.
that what they're saying is purely down to addiction and profits.
Yeah, you do get that sense with some people where you just go, I know you know. Let's just cut through the veneer a little bit.
And
here." that's
sometimes
on.
they know that you know that
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
and I know that you know that I know.
Yeah, it's no way to. It's no way to. We were just reading this thing about Jeremy Clarkson, who's done Clarkson's Farm, and he's like had his moment where he has to send his pigs off to slaughter, and he cries in the TV show. Like he knows that on some level, but then he's still. The next time there's a PETA protest, he we'll get a job and all this other stuff. It's like he's kind of playing that character, but there must be a part of him that's like, well, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I'm already a hypocrite before we've started because I cried when the pig died or whatever it was. And now I'm defending that. And now I'm going against the people who used to think the same as me 3 weeks ago when the pig died. And it must cause so much mental conflict in people.
Yeah. I think our role as activists often is just like, keep fanning that flame. Like there's something already in people, they're conflicted, they kind of know, and it's sometimes for us to just say like, I know you know. Like it's really I
love it when people comment and you get these trolls and they keep commenting and they keep coming back. There's one on my page and he's done like 130 comments on my channel. And that alone tells me that he knows the truth, because if it wasn't the truth or it wasn't a threat, you would just laugh it off and never come back. But I'm like, mate, you've commented 130 times. Like, you genuinely know the truth. It's just because you're trying to fight it that you've felt the need to comment 130 times. It's fascinating, man.
It's not really you that he's arguing with, hey?
Yeah. You're not mad at me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's exactly it. Well, Jay, I have a couple more questions that are just like short ones that might give you a nice moment of reflection or a nice clip that you can use as well. And then I'll let you go and we'll get on. You might not have answers off the top of the dome, but maybe you do. This would be nice if so. What are you most proud of?
In this world kind of thing?
Yeah. Or in any world you choose, I suppose.
In the Matrix, or I'd say, mate, I'm most proud of people who speak their mind and are not scared to go against the status quo. I know this is a little bit different. I mean, I'll give an example. There's a few people who I speak to. You've got these inboxes on Instagram who you talk to someone from America or something, and I've said to this girl before, she hasn't got an activism page. She's just a normal page of like, this girl going out drinking and just living a life, going for meals, going on holidays, whatever. But then she's just like dropping bombs in between each post. And now she's not, sure, she is an activist. I wouldn't say she's not an activist. She's still doing activism. But I love when you've got people like that, as well as full-time activists, obviously, who just are not scared to speak their mind, because all of our beliefs are given to us. People can say, this is my choice, but it's not their choice. Like, we are all just conditioned until we think critically and deconstruct our belief system and go, actually, that's wrong. I'm not doing that anymore, despite what Granddad did. And these people, they've just gone against it all and gone, fuck you. This is the truth. I'm not accepting anything but the truth. And I'm going to drop the truth bombs in your face, knowing full well that you're going to go against me and think differently of me and treat me differently. And I admire that. I think that's amazing. And like I said, these particular people who just, they're not quite in the vegan world, but they're just dropping bombs. Like, it's incredible. And that is what I'm most proud of, I'd say. Just people who just don't give a shit. And it takes people who don't give a shit to make drastic change, because if everyone gave a shit, we'd get absolutely nowhere.
100%. I love that answer. That was awesome.
I felt like I chatted for ages then. Sorry, did I just go off on a mad one?
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. Yeah, no, that was great. And then last question then. what are you particularly excited and or optimistic about for the future of veganism and vegan world?
I like how many people are getting involved. I like how many people have popped up to myself. Not that I'm not saying I'm, like an earthling head or nothing like that, but
No,
I've had a
you're
lot of
getting there.
people
You're getting
pop
there.
up, people, they say, you've inspired me to do this. You haven't just turned me vegan. You're the reason that I'm now doing this. You're the reason now I'm now going undercover. You're the reason. And to me, that just tells me that if I can inspire people, then anyone can. Now, these people are now going to go onto these farms, these abattoirs. They're going to go on live chats. They're going to talk to people in the street, whatever, and they're going to inspire more people. And everything that I'm doing is because of Joey. Joey got me into this world, and without him, the people who are inspired by me wouldn't exist, and the people that they're going to inspire wouldn't exist. So it just gives me hope to hear these stories of people getting involved. Like, people are like, I've had enough. Like, they've watched the video. I've had enough of this. I'm going to do something. I'm going to now start getting active. And that to me is massive, because, when do activists stop becoming activists? Usually, if you're in this game, you're in this game forever. And, people do drop off and come back and stuff. But I think, the more people that start now, which they are, especially over the last 5 years, I think it's going to snowball to the point where there's going to be like 50 Tash Petersons running around Australia, and 12 plank geezers climbing fences, and then there's going to be like
Yes.
50 more Chris Bryants who are just picking people apart on debates, things like that. So I'm staying positive. I mean, it's hard to look at the state of Asia and places like that where it really is behind in terms of veganism, but it's happening, man. Albeit slowly.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's really, really cool. And I agree. I do think things are going in the right direction. And it's on all of us to speed it up. We can interact with this all in a way that makes things better. We can interact in a way which is kind of neutral, which is where I see, like, quote unquote, just being vegan. Or the default is interacting with the world in a way that makes it worse. And just because you mentioned Joey Carbstrong, I always remember something that he said years and years and years, that was like 10 years ago, but it's really always stayed with me, that he was talking about burnout. And he said, I hear a lot of people talking about activism burnout, and are you going to get burnt out, and make sure you're taking rest and you're not doing too much. And he said, I'm more concerned about, are we doing enough? I think there's too much complacency at the other end of the scale, where people need to get a kick up the arse and start doing something. If you get burnout, worry about that, like, when you get there. But most people need to start moving and doing something. And yeah, for me, it's definitely been, you start doing something, and the big things that eventually come of that, you can't really imagine that at the start. You've got to start small, haven't you? You've got to start doing what you can. And it invites you on a journey to develop and become a better activist as you go.
Yeah, mate, I went to a retreat with David Rams and a group of people not long back down London, and we were talking about strategy and things, and time and money, and it needs more strategy as well, not just more activists, but more people who are willing to pop up and say, look, I will edit your videos for you. Look, I will, not necessarily financially, because not many people can donate. Obviously, donations are great for activists. It certainly, without my donations, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do. But in terms of just being a bit more strategic with people and utilizing what people are good at. So if someone's good at editing and they've got 10 hours a week free, edit for someone. If you can, I don't know, come up with comment replies for people's content or whatever it might be. Just if someone would pop up and just help one other activist, I'd be able to triple or quadruple my output if I wasn't spinning all the plates. You know what I mean? And that's just one example. So I just think, you don't have to go and set up a channel like you. You don't have to do an investigation like me. You don't have to go and run around supermarkets throwing milk at people. You can literally help in any way. And I think there's a lot of time wasted, you know, on Netflix and who am I to talk, man? You know, I wasted 27 years partying and not
Sure.
27, up until age 27 partying. But we all waste time, and I think if we could just not waste as much time like on bullshit and step up and help, you haven't got to be doing the big things, you know, that people think. We could get a lot further as well, you know, by doing that.
100%. 100%. I just spoke to someone who runs Flockwork, which is a vegan volunteering platform where you can, it's flockwork.org, and then there's organizations looking for, it's like say like social media support, video editing, or whatever. It's a bit like you can be more involved and help organizations that are doing things. And it's very much based on the model of exactly like you're describing, like a couple of hours less of Netflix or doom scrolling on your phone. You can do something really meaningful, and it will help animals, but it will help you feel better that you're doing something and contributing and being part of the solution, you know?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden people feel like, oh, okay, instead of wasting 2 hours tonight, I've put 2 hours into that, and now all of a sudden I've got a purpose and I'm contributing to this cause, you know, and that's all it takes. I think when people get their foot through the door, whether it's holding a screen for WTF or AV, or whether it's, you know, videoing for someone, just holding the camera, just anything, once you get the foot in the door, it's really not that difficult to keep the ball rolling, because it's like, oh, okay, this is what I do now, this is who I am, you know what I mean? And once you put your foot over the line, that's it. But I think confidence and self-belief come into it a lot. I've realized that a lot of people, they, number one, they're bothered about what other people think. Number two, they have just got no confidence, you know, and things like that. And that's a big problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah. Well, props to you for helping us get some of that confidence. And, you know, more vegans ought to have more of it. We are right. We are on the right side of history. I don't think you should have any doubt about that. And I think that, you know, exactly as you're saying, if you can start small, and in fact, you must start small. You can't decide to be Earthling Ed tomorrow, but you've got, you know, start moving in ways that you will get in the habit of moving, and things will start happening, and then move with it when they do. Do more stuff, give more and share more and do more. That's what I always talk about on my channel.
And you know, I can't remember most of my memories, my fun times, my good times. I had some good times. Well, I had loads of good times, but you're not going to remember most of the things you do. So you may as well put most of your time to something beyond yourself, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Yeah. It's a big world, and there's a lot of suffering out there. There's a lot of problems to be fixed, and we should all feel empowered, because like we really can do. There's a lot of problems in the world that individuals probably can't really do much about one way or another. There's corporate corruption and stuff like this. It's like, okay, well, look, what am I going to do about that? With factory farming, there are really so many levers that any individual can grab and start pulling and making a change and literally saving thousands of lives. It's such, why would you want to do anything else with your time? Is my thinking on it. Like, it's what could be more important? I really don't. Yeah, it just seems obvious to me.
And mate, I'll just say one more thing. I met the mastermind behind Meat Sucks a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
You know, the page, and is it something like 1 billion views on a faceless channel? Now this lad is incredible. Like he sent 18 million people to WTF.
Wow.
The you know, the 3-minute challenge.
3-minute thing, yeah.
If he can do that without a face, you know, the possibilities are endless without a face. You don't have to put your face on these channels. You don't have to go out and cause a scene. You can literally grab content from elsewhere, put a quote over it, and reach millions, if not 1 billion people. Yeah. It's mad what you can do. The reach is incredible. Like, I guarantee if we had 20 of him, the world would be vegan in like 10 years. Like, I swear, he's fascinating what he does. And anyone can learn that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying they're going to go out and get those numbers, but if you even got 1/10 of their numbers, or, you know, 5% of those numbers, you know, it's powerful. And people don't realize that. I don't think they realize how like powerful it is to put out a video knowing it could reach millions of people. It's
100%.
so powerful.
Maybe we need to be losing the faces. Maybe our faces are scaring people off. We need to start some faceless channels. We'll be getting the millions of views before we know it.
It might be there was a time, and it probably still is the time, where your face gets X amount more attention than not. But there could be a time, it could be now, where people's attention turns away from from faces. So it could be a good thing for those who don't want to put their face on. I personally would not want my face. If I could choose between not putting my face on and putting my face on, I'd not put my face on. But whatever gets the views is what we need. So
depends how good looking you are, really, isn't it? You couldn't deprive us of your face, Jake. Come on, you'd get half the views.
Depends how my hair's getting on. But no, it's great to chat, Chris. Thank you. I've enjoyed it, mate, and hopefully some people can be inspired. And thank you for what you do too. It's been fantastic, mate. And I want to talk to you about mock meats in general and the science with that on my cast, mate. So we'll do that soon, if possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll look forward to it. And where can people find your stuff, Jake? Do you want to shout out your channels and everything?
Yeah, just at Plant Geezer, TikTok, YouTube at Plant Geezer, and Instagram Plant Geezer. And if you're interested in coaching or want to learn anything about health, fitness, nutrition, it is Plant Geezer Coaching. I've just set up a new channel doing that. And yeah, so 2 bites of the cherry. So yeah, that's all, mate, I think.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. We did nearly 2 hours, so you've been very generous with your time.
Bloody hell, mate. I can't see the time. That is crazy. It felt like an hour to me, mate, but that's...
There you go. Time flies, eh?
Sweet. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it, mate, and good to meet you.
I appreciate you a lot, mate. Yeah, really nice to meet you, and keep doing what you're doing.
You too, mate. Thank you.
Good man.
Cheers,
Take
mate.
care. Well, there you go. Plant Geezer. As I live and breathe. The man himself. That was good. I enjoyed that a lot. PlantGeezer.com. Thank you, Miss Teaspoon, in the chat. There you go. I wasn't looking at chat too much, but I'm glad to see I didn't accidentally mute the mics this time, at least. Bullshit crystal ball. Nice. Hey, Martin. Nice to see you. Hey, Bandit. Thanks for joining. Hey, Already Vegan. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you all joining and watching. And I'm going to leave it there. We read a few cool news articles at the start. Feel like I did a good bit of commentary. We'll see when I watch them back for the segments. But really nice conversation with Plant Geezer Jake. What a legend, hey? What a guy. Hey, there he is. How's it going? Plant Geezer in chat. Well, good, man. I really appreciate you coming on, dude. And I hope you keep doing what you're doing. And I hope that everyone watching is inspired to do more as well. You can find links in all of my video descriptions for the Give More, Share More, and Do More resources that I recommend. We've got animal charity evaluators identifying the best bang for your buck if you want to donate. We've got the Fast Action Network at action.thehumaneleague.org if you, like me, want to be an armchair activist. And there's plenty of things that you can share online as well, and I have a couple of links to good repositories for stuff to share on your social medias. As far as I can tell, those are really the main 3 things that each of us can do as individuals to impact the number of animals in factory farms and slaughterhouses. And so that's always been the motto of the channel: give more, share more, and do more. Pick up your resources in the video description for that. Check out Plant Geezer if you haven't seen them already. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all next stream. Take it easy, guys. Cheers.